Stop listening to atheist YouTubers.
You can't help but smile like a little bitch.
Shut up, fool!
Yeah, that's really bad. That's really, really bad. To me, this was flagrant.
I don't think anyone's ready for Doug.
But I can admit it. Jesus drowned babies. Get over it.
Hey, man! This makes sense!
Never gets old. Never, ever gets old. Who was here first? Zach Oodle. Oodle? I got oodles of you. First, you're a good man. You're what the world needs more of. Same with you, Guzman. No, Pine Points are not coming back because I do not want to be a leader of a cult. And Brian, you're a good chap too. Finn, Hammer, you might as well leave. You're here fourth. Same with you, Anthony. You're like in seventh, eighth. We'll meet again on the putt-putt course. I thought I'd be more focused with my questions today in order to inspire more theists to call in. So here's the topics today. Are you for Christian nationalism? Why is killing a zygote bad or a blastocyst bad? Are you a transphobe? And have you experienced the inner testimony, of the Holy Spirit? And then we can talk about those things. Because I got to admit, the reasons why you believe it's been done to death, and I'm just going to give you my point of view, Christians. You've lost the historical thing. You lost the philosophical thing. The experiential thing I can appreciate, but there's too many defeaters. So there's really, basically you just believe because you believe, and now we just got to talk about specific issues. Am I wrong? I don't think so. Well, no, I am wrong. I'm at least partially wrong. There are people out there who haven't heard the critiques of all those things I just said, are completely unawares of what's going on, and might be hearing it for the first time. So we can talk about that too. Mr. God, actually, God loves me. This I know. How do I know this? Because Mr. Deity told me so. Mr. Deity made a video about me. When was it? One day ago. Here it is. Let me bring it up. And I don't know this for sure, but I'm quite confident that it's in response to a video I made about me and Matt Dillahunty, where Matt Dillahunty said, if you're a fan of Doug and a fan of me, stop being a fan of me, Matt Dillahunty. And I said the opposite. And I truly meant it. I mean, I wasn't lying there, but all my cards on the table, I made that video on purpose to make Matt look bad, because I don't think you should behave that way. I don't think it's good for society to say, hey, if we have differences of opinion, then stay away from me. I think that's very dangerous precedent to set. And I think God himself made this video. But I'm scared to play it. Not for me, but for you. Because if I play it, it's bound for me to say something political, and I know for some people they don't like that. So I don't know what to do. Maybe I should do a poll. Let the people decide. I can go either way. I would love to play it and talk about it and just talk freely. But I know some of you just don't like that sort of thing. Should I play the Mr. Deity clip? Could get political. But later on, of course, we'll talk about religious stuff, like these questions I have at the bottom here. Yes, no, add option, don't care. I'll let the people decide. I'm usually a benevolent dictator, but today I will allow some democracy in here. Oh, I'm drinking really strong coffee, and I'm chewing nicotine gum. I got nicotine and caffeine crazy in me right now. I feel like I felt like a natural high to that would be going for a 12-mile run. I don't know if we have any long-distance runners in here, but if you go for double-digit mile runs and then you get back home, you get a runner's high. It's amazing. Natural drugs, the best. Oh my, look at this. You and Dawkins give me hope for the atheist community. Well, we're both very old and bigoted and transphobic. Well, while the poll's running, it looks like I'll be playing it. The third question, are you a transphobe? I put that up there because I've been recently called that. But I really don't know what the word means, because people have different ideas of what it means. So I had my friend Reed, Nice Wonder from Cordial Curiosity, and my daughter come up with this video, and they're going to explain what transphobia means here. Sharpen it up a bit. Okay, here we go. So needless to say, I was shocked to find out that for the definition of transphobe, my picture was in there. Okay, so the poll results are in. Looks like I'm playing Mr. Deity, God himself. 72% say play it. 22% don't care. You know, I appreciate, for all those of you who voted I don't care, good for you. I mean, you're dead inside. I love that. You know, I made that video. Do I say this? Why do I stop myself? There's no filter. You know, in the 50s and 60s, the N-word was used against African Americans. And the African Americans did something brilliant. They took ownership of the word. That's what I'm doing with the word transphobe. And no, I'm not a transphobe based on that definition, but since it's been thrown around like it's candy, let's make it so that those who call others transphobes are the bigots, just like someone who would use the N-word. Ooh. See? Now you regret clicking onto this channel. I apologize for that. Okay, let's hear from God.
Occasions now, I've gotten blowback from various commenters for mentioning Pinecreek Doug in one of my videos.
You want to see my actual yearbook photo? Yeah, Mr. Didi, you're gonna get a kick out of this if you ever watch this. But that's funny. His actual yearbook photo. I haven't aged a bit. Oh, let's see if I have it here. You know what? I hate Facebook. I really do. Especially because I created a business page like the Pinecreek thing, and it's not that easy to go back and forth from your personal page to your business page. I just dislike it. I only use Facebook for oh, this is a great picture. This is me in a private Christian school. I think I'm in grade 10 or 11 here. Probably 10. Oh.
If you're unfamiliar with Doug, if that is his real name.
That is my real name. I
don't
just
think
proved it.
is. I think he just really loves the dog from Up. His main original channel is all about counter-apologetics and street epistemology. Doug uses the Socratic method, asking questions, presenting
Is it quiet for you guys? Yeah, let me bump it up.
hypotheticals, and running thought experiments to challenge theists about their beliefs, all the while gently and kindly leading them straight into the pit of hell with the rest of us heretics and heathens, or infidels if you lean Muslim. It's admirable work, and he's really good at it. Quite a few people have freed themselves from the oppression of religion.
And I got Anthony Magnabosco to thank for that. Maybe he's already left, but yeah, he inspired me 7 years ago. When did you first start going? I think it was I found you a year after you started doing those interviews out at university campuses. Is that 7 years ago? 8?
Thanks to Doug. Or is it Myron? So why the pushback, you ask? Great question. The pushback comes because Doug is a conservative. Okay, gross. I know. I know that people have difficulty understanding how an otherwise intelligent person can still hold on to trickle down and the silly notion of personal responsibility.
By the way, trickle down. I know your favorite liberal economist said trickle down has been fully and thoroughly debunked. And tell that to the Federal Reserve when they did quantitative easing. And that's a form of trickle down. Oops.
Especially when we know what we know now about neuroscience.
2014 is when you started, Anthony said. Wow, okay, so I was right. 6 at 3, no, it's 9 years. I probably found you 1 or 2 years after that. I was an early adopter to street epistemology.
And economics. So why do I support Doug? Or is it Wilbur? Let's get the personal stuff out of the way right off the bat. Doug, in some ways, is a protege of mine.
True.
I didn't know that. I never officially took him under my wing, per se, but Doug...
You didn't see me, Mr. Didi, when I was outside your home in the bushes?
...credits Mr. Deity as being a big part of his journey out of religion. And the guys referred to me as a legend. You...
Did I? I think I did. I can see myself saying he's a legend. Yes, you are a legend. You're God.
People know what a schmuck I am, so of course I'm going to love the guy.
See, and he even uses the same terminology I use. I say schmuck a lot, he says schmuck a lot. Schmuck a lot. That's it.
Right? I mean, flattery will indeed get you everywhere. So there's that. More substantively, I have a confession. Many of you may not know this, but growing up Mormon, I was quite the right-winger. I got the laissez-faire catalog of books every month. I read my Thomas Sowell, my Milton Friedman, my F.A. Hayek, even Ayn Rand. I considered myself a libertarian conservative and voted for Bush.
That's probably the same as what I consider myself right now, conservative libertarian. I'm pretty libertarian on a lot of things. I think a lot of social democrats and I would agree on a lot of stuff like the drug issue. I think more drugs should be legal rather than illegal. What other things? I actually think prostitution should be legal. I could go on and on, but this is not the political channel.
Twice. Yeah, twice. Oh, I'm going to be sick. I became an atheist in 1992, leaving Mormonism in March of 1993. 11 years later, I was still voting Republican and didn't vote for a Democrat until 2012.
Okay, so he's saying 9 years later. So let's say 9 to 13 years later, he switched from voting right to voting left. So how long have I been out now? I don't know. I think it's about 10 years. Oh, no, it's more than 10 years. I'm approaching 13. So any day now, God, I will be voting Democrat.
Skipping the 2008 election altogether. So I understand how hard it is to get beyond the political indoctrination even after leaving the faith. And Doug doesn't read. So
God's right. God knows the truth.
if it took me 20 years with my voracious reading habit,
20?
one can
Okay.
only imagine how long it might take Doug.
Okay, so I got 7 years left. So you guys got to, you Democrats, you people on the left, you got to wait 7 more years before I convert to your side of the political spectrum. That's not too long. That's like one slave cycle in the Old Testament.
The point is, I get it, and I empathize. But even more importantly, I don't need or expect everyone to agree with me on everything. I find this modern urge for purity and unanimity absolutely totalitarian.
He's speaking to you, Matt Dillahunty. He's speaking to you right now. Well done, Mr. Didi. Well done, God. You're the king.
I want disagreement, and I want people to be free to disagree, especially those holding minority or unpopular opinions, because I know that's how much of moral and societal progress has come about. What's good for the goose is good for the Gandalf. Besides, do you really think that there are other people on the planet who agree with you 100% of the time? Have you been married? It doesn't happen, folks. It just doesn't. What a boring world that would be anyway.
Amen.
So I take the good that Doug, or Grover, is it Grover? I don't know. I take the good that Doug has to offer. Sometimes it's crazy good, and I leave the rest behind. I care much more about the damage religion does, and know that leaving religion is often the gateway to rethinking other long-held
Marijuana use.
silly beliefs. Finally, I think there's some strategic value in Doug being conservative, given what he's doing. Most of the Christians Doug, or Alfie? Is it Alfie? Most of the Christians that Doug is talking to, certainly the evangelicals, are also conservative.
Evangelicals. Evangelicals.
So there's a natural bond there, and people don't have to immediately confront the idea of transforming their entire lives.
Okay, God's not wrong here. In fact, I would dare to say that people like me have deconverted more evangelicals than 2 out of 3 other atheist YouTubers, because I do lean conservative. Remember, I think it was about a month ago, I asked, Franklin came on. I think it was Franklin. And I asked him, would you rather, you have a son or daughter, would you rather have your child become an atheist conservative like me, or a far left-wing woke liberal? Christian though, like one of those progressive types. And he struggled with that question. He goes, well, for eternity's sake, like I want a Christian, like someone who believes that Jesus died and rose again from the dead for their sins. But here on planet Earth, I'd rather have an atheist Doug. That's how strong these political opinions can be. And I do think that most Christians are more comfortable talking to a guy like me than most of you listening right now, if they know your political views.
they can maintain their otherwise supremacist views even if they'll have to dump their Christian nationalism. Plus, part of me thinks that when Doug or Phineas talks politics, he's doing an homage to Mr. Deity.
Okay, so he's saying that I'm not being serious in everything I say. That's partially true. Like, I would say it's more about the way I say things, or the hyperbole, the exaggeration. That's definitely true. But people who know me, people who listen to me for years and years and years, they admit, no, Doug leans conservative.
Playing a not-so-bright character in order to satirize a silly belief or idea, because when he talks politics, he sounds like a fucking idiot, just like I did back in 2003. Anyway, that's my thinking. Let me know what you think.
Yeah, it's important to know that when people on the right listen to some people on the left, they will say the exact same thing, except they probably wouldn't say the F word. I still can't. I struggle to say it. Especially about, is it possible for two men to be lesbians? You sound like an idiot. Anyhow, holy engagement, Batman. Whoa. Wow. Mr. Deity, if you ever hear this, is this like average for you? Look at the comments. Some of these names I recognize. Wow. Still going. Still going. I'm scared to read them, though, because then I'll start talking politics. So let me open up the room for anybody to call in, and then if you want to tag me with questions, actually, let me do another poll and see how many theists we have in here. Actually, this is targeted to Christians today, not just any theists. I hate pantheists. So if you're a pantheist here, go to a different channel, please. I am a Christian, non-Christian. Let's start a poll and see what I'm working with. In the meantime, let me get my whereby going. Feel free to call in. And the topics, you can choose any one of these 4 topics or other if you want, but I think these are fun. Are political streams normally Monday? Yeah, they're usually in the beginning of the week, either Monday or Tuesday on my Pinecreek politics channel, and then the more theistic religious stuff is usually later in the week. Sometimes I've done Wednesday, but it's typically Thursday. Sometimes I do Friday. This is just a hobby for me, so I do not let YouTube run my life. I run YouTube. So I just do what I want. Levels are good. Well, that's disappointing. 5% Christians in here. Well, okay, I should be careful. That means there's 10 Christians in here. At least 10. There's probably more because some Christians don't want to vote. What's 4% of 2? Yeah, that's 8. Only 8 Christians in here. And I know Stephanie's one of them. No, Stephanie, you're not a Christian anymore, right? You're a deist. Don't be shy if you're a Christian in here to vote. Like I don't It's confidential. I won't know who you are. I'll just know your social security number, your mother's middle name. Let me put the link. Where did I put it? Didn't I already post it? Thanks for the donation, Mason Dry. If genitals don't define gender, how does removing them affirm it? That's a great question to ask a Christian, right? I actually think most evangelical Christians would appreciate that question. Okay, let's pin that. I hate to have to bring atheists that were Christians on and then pretend they're Christians again. Actually, Kenny would appreciate that. I just missed the poll, non-Christian. I didn't vote. I'm Christian, not shy, not scared. I love debates and want all the smoke. What's up? Oh, what's up, myself? What you do is you click on that link on the live stream chat and you can come in and we can talk about one of these 4 topics or a different topic if you want. If you're not shy, hop on. I thought the video that we just watched was satire, but he is actually a lefty. Oh yeah, God leans left. Yeah, I know, Stephanie. You're a woo-woo person. Don't get me wrong. I love the woohoos. No, I don't love them. I like them. But to talk about deeper stuff, it becomes a little weird. I'd rather talk to a conservative fundamentalist than a progressive type wishy-washy Christian. Although, that being said, if you are a progressive type wishy-washy Christian, you're welcome to click. I pretend to be a Christian for my wife. Yeah. I think I did that for a short while too. Isn't it interesting how this is my intuition? My intuition is that most people in the United States who deconvert from Christianity are men. I guess it's at least 60%, a 60-40 split. Why is that? Because I think Christianity appeals to women more than men, and Islam appeals to men more than women. Did my taste in music change after deconverting? Not really. It changed when I had kids. I mean, when my kids became teenagers. No, even before that. I was singing like those kiddie songs that they were listening to on TV. So, for example, if someone calls in and I ask them, are you for Christian nationalism? And they say yes, I would ask them questions like, if a Hindu prays to Ganesh on the streets, how much jail time should they receive? It's a great question, right? I know from experience it takes about 45 minutes for people to call in. I don't know why that is. But we've got 15 minutes to go. Oh, just as I say that, I get proved wrong. JDog? I see you, but I don't hear you. if you can hear me, type something in the chat of whereby. Or just make sure your settings are right, the top right gearbox, and then refresh. Yeah, okay, I see you. So he hears me. It's not Starbucks I'm drinking, it's Costco. I'm drinking Costco's Bold coffee. Really good. If you're a coffee drinker, stop buying overpriced Starbucks stuff and just go to Costco, buy those big, huge boxes of Keurig coffee cups. Most people have a Keurig machine. I mean, you'll over a course of a year, you probably save hundreds and hundreds of dollars. Let's make Starbucks stock price go down. Yeah, I can see why people like gospel music even if they're not Christians. Like there's a Seinfeld episode where George Costanza says, I love gospel music. It's so refreshing. It's so, what was the word he used? As a Jew, he loved it. So JDog, you're going to have to refresh once you've set your settings. If you're using Chrome, hit the refresh thing on the top left. You know what's interesting is even though Mr. Deity said, take the good about me and forget about the bad, I'm getting more engagement now on my political channel recently than this one. Isn't that funny? I did a live stream on my political channel this week. Was it this week? And about the same time as now, I had over 200 viewers watching. JDog, type something. Can you hear me still? Oh, okay. I see you, JDog. I'm going to remove this version of you and let this version of you in. Oh, I think I hear something.
Oh, I think I hear something.
Yeah, you're going to have to turn off the YouTube. Say something, JDog. If you could still man the pro trans, man, JDog, I gotta remove you. I just hear feedback. I muted you from the audience. If you could still man the pro trans case, what would it be? I'm not even sure what the pro trans case is, other than there are real people who are in pain. Sonia, there are people who have this experience of seeing one thing and feeling another. Many of these people are young and they need help. And by people not giving them the help they need, you risk depression, anxiety, and suicide. So you should get out of the way between the families and the doctors and them and allow them to be most helped. How's that, Sonia? I even said that in a very calm, gentle voice, right? Now, Sonia, Steelman, the anti-trans case. Can you do it? I don't want to do it because that's anti-trans. But you know what I mean, right? The concerns that people have. JDog, what's going on? This is attempt number 3. Can you hear me, JDog? I can't hear you. Oh, hang on.
Oh, hang on.
I hear myself.
I hear myself.
Say something. Still can't hear you. Okay, I've given up on you, JDog. Someone else call in, please. See, this is the religious channel. It seems like the only thing anybody wants to talk about is politic type stuff. If we had a new medical procedure where we could swap the body by gender back and forth with no negatives, would your opinion change on the issue? Robert, how do you define gender? A lot of these issues boil down to definitions. How do Christians explain the evolution of religion from animism to poly to present day to the idea of... What? Thomas Paine. You know I don't read. What are you doing with these big words? I have to think too much to understand your question. I think I understand your question. It all boils down to survival, that there are different ways for communities to help them survive. And that's why they shifted from animism to poly to mono. Like, to me, monotheism is more efficient than polytheism. There's some downsides to it, but it's way more efficient. And I think Christianity is actually more efficient than Islam. Can you hear me, JDog? Yeah, I think he just is trolling now. What are my thoughts on the Trinity? How do you understand it now versus when you're a Christian? The way I understand the Trinity now is multiple personality disorder. You can actually make sense of the Trinity if you view it that way. One being with different persons in it. How did I understand it when I was a Christian? Just the way Christians say it. That one being in 3 persons that are distinct yet the same. And if you think about it too much or ask certain questions, you get crazy inside. Thank you, VDub, for the generous donation. Did you shadow ban me? I don't know. Also, you don't think making videos with fake audio is slightly dishonest? Thanks. Okay. Let me bring up the chat here. Did I? Yes, I think I did ban you on the political channel, but maybe on this one too. Why? I don't even remember. But I have a general rule of thumb. If someone says something to me or to someone else, I kind of picture it like it's happening in my around my kitchen table in my home. And if I think this person would not have said this to me face to face, or to someone else who's in my house, if I think they wouldn't really have said this if it was real life and still expect to stay, they're gone. That's kind of like my principle for deciding who gets banned and who doesn't. And there's exceptions, of course, like if there's some very clear-cut cases of spamming, if someone's like, comment, and it has nothing to do with the video, gone. Then there's other cases where they're like, the best example is, for those of you who are parents, you know you've been in these situations where you're talking to another adult and then your child is to your left on the side, tugging at your shirt. Daddy, 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 just begging for attention. Some of you are like that in the comment section. Another thing, another way to get banned on my channel is to really show yourself, in my opinion, to be not bright, needy, and very needy. So what I mean by that is there's no give. Like there's people here who maybe who disagree with me and who've talked to me, who I think can attest to the fact where I'll say, hey, here you're right, or I was wrong. But if you're the type of person who's just constantly pushing back, no give in you, your risk of being banned goes up. You're like a skin rash. It's not like you haven't really said anything to be obviously ban-worthy, but you're just, the sheer quantity of the irritation is just, it's not worth it. And a lot of you are like that. Here's another thing. I made it very clear, if you've known me, that you're getting your full money's worth here, VDub, by the way, that I don't like long comments. It is the utmost example of narcissism when you write like long comments in a YouTube video, assuming that people care enough to read it. Like, you're assuming people care about what you have to say. That's a huge assumption. Like, when you buy a thick book with lots of words in it, you pay money. And you're saying, I am willing to pay money to read those words. For most of you, I haven't paid, for all of you, I have not paid you money to hear what you have to say. Now, there's exceptions to that as well. Like, if I know you and we have some type of relationship online and I've engaged with you a lot before, then yeah, you have a little more leeway to write long comments. But for the most part, if you can't say what you want to say to me or ask what you want to ask to me in 2 or 3 short sentences, you're either stupid or you're one of those other things I mentioned, needy or narcissistic, or you got just something up your butt. In other words, be a mature human. Also, you don't think making videos with fake audio is slightly dishonest? No, I do not. And here's why. I made it painfully clear of what exactly I was doing. There's no one who can accuse me that there's sleight of hand going here. So when I make a video and I use AI to change someone's voice to say something they never said, I put it on the screen, AI generated, and then I put before that, this is what it may sound like. What would it sound like if? What if this is what this person said? Painfully clear. That's like me saying to a Christian, I'm about to trap you, walk into the trap. Cards on the table. Now, if you still think that's unethical, that's your opinion. I disagree with it. I think it's a powerful technique. Because I could say, for example, what if Matt Dillahunty would have said, and I took the transcript and I read the whole transcript and I changed one word. I could do that, but it's my voice. The only thing is, what would it sound like if he said it? He didn't say it, but what would it has that extra oomph to it. It's a technique. But again, you're free to think it's unethical. I just disagree. I remember when I first started my YouTube channel, I pulled something off. Oh, what was the? It was a. I don't think it exists anymore. It was a form of Twitter online. Anyhow, I pulled something off from what a Muslim said, and an atheist who was so high and mighty and wanted to show his virtue said this is unethical. In fact, it's illegal and blah blah blah. And this person didn't even say this, and it was just a big mess. And I remember just very calmly saying, if you were wrong about this, would you apologize to me? He goes, yeah, but I'm not wrong. He apologized. In the wee hours of the morning, I remember, he went live to apologize when nobody was awake. I forget his name. It was so hilarious. But I followed the terms of service, and I even got the guy who I pulled it from to admit, yeah, that's what I said. I mean, that's what I meant. I actually think I was part of the reason why he left Islam too.
It's finally working.
Yeah, the fifth time is the charm.
I'm sorry about that, man. I'm on mobile, and I had my phone connected to my work truck, and then I think it connected to my AirPods, and it was like all over the place. I was trying to get the Bluetooth disconnected. Sorry about that.
I forgive you, my son. I thought you were maybe a troll after a while, and I almost didn't pick up this time. I thought I'd try it for the fifth time.
No, man. I mean, I like to troll people, but never you, Doug. Never you.
Okay, are you a Christian?
I'm on a weird way out. I don't really know where I'm at right now. So I guess I kind of want to talk about number 4. Who knows? Maybe that's the weird coincidence. Number 4 is kind of like part of why I'm having a problem. So maybe that's the Lord speaking to me. Who knows?
You want to speak a little closer to your mic?
Yeah, sorry about that. Is that a little better?
Yeah, just speak clear and loud into the mic. So would you say you have experienced the inner testimony of the Holy Spirit?
Yeah. And the scary thing is I feel like I just straight up told God no. So that's kind of scary.
So what can you explain what that experience was like?
Sure. So I'll try to, let me go through my story. I guess I came to Christ when I was like 12-ish. I had some personal stuff going on that I won't get into. 12-year-old kid, I felt guilty about whatever happened. I went to church and, I got convicted. And then from there, I went to like a small Christian school, yada, 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 started growing in my faith, blah, blah, blah. And then like probably the beginning of this year, I kind of started to like really sit down and think, because when I was growing in my faith, like the big thing I like to do is like, I'd watch like different YouTubers and stuff and, just listen to their arguments and, if they made sense, they made sense. But I never really like sat down and went through the Bible on my own. Like, I went to Bible study and whatnot, but, I never really sat and thought about it. And I kind of sat down and I was like, okay, well, where should I start? Well, the Gospels, that's supposed to be the main message of the Bible, right? So like, I'll go through the Gospels. And, I'm going through and, while I'm reading, I kind of realized, wow, I was never genuinely taking Christianity seriously. Like, and I got really convicted. I think it might've been the Sermon on the Mount that I read. And I remember I was in my work truck. I'm like sitting there crying and like, wow, I really like, I'd had all these theological things building up. Like I understood, people being made in the image of God. I'd felt like the love of God and things like that before. And like I feel like it clicked. Everything finally clicked and it made sense. And I really felt like I was a completely different person than I was before. Like it really felt like everything finally clicked. And the problem was I kept on reading, and then you get to those verses about hell. And like I said, kind of like that parable of new wine into new wineskins. I was trying to be like as open-minded as I
Was
could.
Let me interrupt you here for a
Yeah,
second.
sure.
Was that experience of feeling like it finally clicked and you're a new person, is that the inner testimony of the Holy Spirit?
I feel like that was definitely a part of it. I'll step back a little bit and something else that kind of built on top of that. But I will say that yes, because it just felt like such a radical, different change to like my entire outlook on like how I looked at people, how I looked at the world. Like I couldn't believe it.
Okay, see, that's to me,
yeah,
that
so
sounds a little bit different than like having a vision or dream or just like feeling warm sensations down your spine. To me, this is more like a worldview change over time.
No, and that's very. I guess. Gosh, how do I? Yeah, that's very well. And I'm glad I'm talking to you because I wanted to bring this up so you could help me to rationalize it. So I'm glad I'm talking to you. But anyways, so like I said, I was reading the Gospels and I got to those verses about, the eternal hell, and it just seemed like such a contradictory thing, and I was taking it so seriously. I kept trying to rationalize in my mind. I'm like, no, that can't be it. There has to be some other way. And like I've been watching a couple of your streams to try to like help deconstruct. And you're right. There really is no reason for Christianity without hell. So I just kept on thinking, like any rationalization I came up with, like, if Christianity were true, then I guess, the eternal hell has to be that's the only way it makes sense. And I don't know, I kind of just felt like I sat with God and I kind of, I was like kind of trying to talk to him. And I essentially told him, like I said, well, why don't you just not throw people in hell in the first place? And, I kind of just slowly felt like I was getting over the idea of God. And I'm kind of at this weird place where I've been watching your streams and, you've been, like you said, humor is probably the best way to help you deconstruct. Like I've been learning to slowly laugh at some of the ideas that I used to hold on to, which has been helpful. But that was part of it. But so one reason that the changing of the heart really, like, one thing that built on top of that, sorry if I'm rambling, I had a really bad family thing happen probably 2 years ago. And there was this one instance where me and my family, it's three of us, something in my brain just came to that one verse about, when one or more come together, and pray, I will, give you whatever you ask for.
Mm-hmm.
And that was probably like, I think from what I can remember, probably the one time I've ever tore down every single mask I've ever had up, like put my genuine self out there. And the thing that I asked for, it wasn't in the exact way that I wanted it, but like probably the way Paul says it, within the hour, I got it, kind of what I asked for. And the way I rationalized it at the time was like, okay, God, I understand you're not going to give me exactly what I want in the way that I want it, but you're still going to, you're showing me that you're in control and such.
So you would say this is part of the inner testimony of the Holy Spirit getting...
Yeah, I would say that. So that changing of the heart, and then that one instance of where, like I said, within the hour, what I asked for was given.
Okay. What would be an explanation why that might not be the inner testimony of the Holy Spirit? That situation of getting kind of what you asked for?
It could very well be coincidental. It absolutely could. There was just a lot of other small things built on top of that make it really hard for me personally to kind of see it as anything more than coincidence. But if I'm going to be honest, it can be. It very well can be.
Yeah. So it seems like to me that you want Christianity to be true.
Yeah, for certain reasons. The funny thing, when it came to hell, I feel like I started to get emotional. I was like, now I don't want, before I was like, oh, I want it to be true. And anytime I came up with like dissenting information, I'd kind of like, I think you've mentioned before, like, that like in your heart, like, it's an attack on your, since I built my identity on Christianity, I kind of even subconsciously realized I'm getting worked up about it because it feels like it's an attack on my identity.
Say that again.
Yeah, no, I'm very introspective. I think that's one thing I have on my
hang on a second, JDog.
Yeah,
what did you just say? An attack on your identity?
Yeah, no, I'll be straight up. I'll be straightforward. I mean, that's part of Christianity. They tell you to identify in Christ, right? That's your foundation. So when people attack Christianity, you know, it is in a sense an attack on yourself, right? I think that's why people, they get so freaked out.
Right. So when people like me ask questions of you to make you doubt Christianity, you feel like I'm attacking your identity.
Absolutely, yeah, and they won't admit this, but I'll be straight with you. Absolutely, yeah, because you know I remember being taught, and I think there's even Bible verses that say that you find your identity in Christ, and so when, like you said, when you question it, it gets to like the core of who you are, and it's I think psychology has talked about that. Like what is it, the cognitive dissonance when you're presented with opposing views, your psychological response is to actually double down on your views.
What would happen if a guy like me were to destroy your identity in Christ?
I've been kind of sitting and thinking about that. I've been kind of sitting and thinking about like, well, what am I really holding on to Christianity for? That's something even when I was Christian, the street epistemology, I was kind of doing that without even realizing it to myself. Because I feel like my friend group kind of just accepts it just because they do. And for me, I was always more introspective. I was like, I really want to know why, like, what are the basics and why do I really believe these basics?
Like, do you think you'd go through depression or anxiety and need several hundred hours of counseling if a guy like me were to convince you Christianity is false?
Maybe in the past I would have. Now I'm kind of in a weird apathetic point.
Really?
Yeah, I'm trying to get to an apathetic point. I'm trying to, like I said,
You're trying, but you're not there yet.
Yeah, I'm trying, but I'm not there yet.
Okay, what about Christianity gives you identity?
I really like the idea of the image of God that Christianity offers. I just really like that, thinking that, you're created with a purpose. You're created in the image of this being. For me, that was part of why.
But how does that help you exactly? The image of God and created by Him.
It just it helped me have a respect for myself and have a respect for my fellow human beings.
There you go. I can appreciate that answer. So do you think that if I convinced you God does not exist, Christianity is false, you would respect me less or other people less? Because they're not created in the image of God anymore, right? In your mind?
Right. I would hope not. I mean, I would try not to, but I'll be honest. I mean, I've had to like sit down and look at my personality type a little bit. I might be a little more concerned with like my inner circle, right? Like I'd still like treat other people, properly and stuff, but like my personality type and like kind of just like my brain wiring might be more like, well, I'm more concerned with my inner circle rather than like maybe humanity as a whole.
Can I ask how old you are?
I am going to be 24 soon.
Okay. Are you married?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Do you have a girlfriend?
I do not, no.
Okay. Do you want a girlfriend?
Yeah, I'd like to. Waiting to move out.
Would you ever date a girl that's an atheist?
Yeah, I maybe. I'm also more right-leaning like you are, so it should have to be, I don't know if I'd want to date like a nose-pierced girl, so.
Okay, let me get this straight. You rather date an atheist conservative than a Christian liberal?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, maybe. And that's something I also kind of sat and thought about. Like, definitely when I was like more of a teenager, the political like aspect of Christianity was kind of more important to me. But as I started growing, I kind of started to grow out of it and become a little more nuanced.
What don't you like? What don't you like about people who lean left? Like you said, you rather date a atheist conservative than a Christian liberal. What about the left bothers you so much?
They're really whiny. they're always crying about it. Really gets annoying.
Well, the people on the right can be whiny, like those
they
Trump
can,
supporters.
And that's why I've distanced from like hard right. Like I don't like to say I don't know, maybe I'm like center right, I guess. I haven't really sat down and gone through my politics like I'm going through my religion. So who knows? Maybe that'll change after I evaluate my political view.
Let me ask you some speed round questions.
Sure.
Just answer yes, no, lean yes, lean no, true, false, whatever. Today, as of right now, do you believe a man actually rose from the dead 2,000 years ago named Jesus?
I don't think I do anymore. I don't know. I might go through like.
Hey, JDog, hang on.
Yeah, sorry.
This is speed round.
Yes. I would lean no.
Okay, JDog. Do you believe that Jesus, a man who lived 2,000 years ago, was God incarnate? As part of the Trinity?
I don't know. I kind of weirdly hold on to the Trinity for some reason. I'll have to sit down and go through why I do, but I'm kind of like holding on to the Trinity for some weird reason.
But you don't know, or you do believe it?
I think I remember I sat and went through this. I think that if there is a God, there is some kind of Trinity, just because we see that in so many cultures. Maybe that's like just something.
Wait a minute, you said if there's a God? Okay, let's keep this in speed round here.
Sure. Sorry, we're going
between 0 and 100.
Mm-hmm.
100 means you know that this pen's going to fall towards the ground when I let go.
Mm-hmm.
That's 100. That type of knowledge.
Yeah.
Or confidence. How confident are you that God exists?
%30 maybe.
Okay, JDog. I gotta break some bad news to you.
Sure.
You're an atheist and you're not a Christian.
Yeah, that might be true.
So I'll have Myron send you a gift card, $20 gift card from Applebee's. So you and your atheist, right-leaning, conservative girlfriend in the future will have something in common.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Everything's going to be fine, J-Dog. Don't worry about a thing. You just keep breathing. You said yourself that years ago you might need 100 hours of counseling, but you're a tough guy. You can do it.
Thank you, Doug. Yeah.
And if you know you're worried about your family, it'll be just between you and me, a little secret.
Okay, yeah. Thank you, Doug. Appreciate it.
See ya.
All right, see ya.
Probably should have led with the speed round, right? But sometimes people just need to talk, right? Like people just like to talk and explain things, and that's fine. Like people on the transatlantic like to do that too. Perfect, Dawah. You love to talk.
Hello.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm fine, thank you.
My socialist, commie Muslim friend.
Doug, I would like to say that you are quite a rational atheist because I had a debate with Matt Dillahunty on MDD, and then I was trying to, give him, facts that why God exists. And then later, another time on his channel, I called in and I wanted what make him to believe that God exists. I gave him an example of, if I split the moon, do you believe that God exists? He even rejected that. And, when you say that your wet napkins, if I light up that one, that, he was saying that there are 1,000 possibilities if you split the moon, and for you, just a wet napkin is enough. But
okay,
for him,
but let me explain to you why Matt and I are different. Matt is a stubborn guy who I think when Christians and Muslims alike say that he feels bitter towards God, I think the concept of God, they're telling the truth. Like they're right. I don't have this type of bitterness and hatred. Like if God exists, I'm not going to be mad about it. I think a guy like Matt would be. And so I am honest in saying if I see something amazing that sure there's a small chance it can be explained naturally, but if it looks like supernatural, smells like supernatural, and walks like supernatural, it's probably supernatural, whatever that means. It's not natural, okay? And but Matt doesn't. He's not willing to go there.
No, exactly. And many of his followers, they were writing on my channel that there are millions of possibility, as he was saying as well. How, for example, I was saying even moon splitting is not enough. How about if I bring a galaxy close to our galaxy? They even rejected that one. And they were saying that, no, it doesn't prove that God exists. But what I wanted to do was that if you believe that God exists, if I perform that miracle that you wish, that you expect, what will be your next step?
My next step would be, it depends. You're saying for Islam or Christianity?
I mean, you know that God exists, Let's say that you believe, God exists. What would be your next step?
Because my next step would be, in the case of the napkin, I often, with Christians, they'll say, pray in the name of Jesus.
Okay.
And if it lights on fire. Now, if you were to pray in the name of Allah and it doesn't light on fire, I'd say, well, maybe the Christianity thing is true and not the Islam thing. So then I would now investigate Christianity, even though I came from it, and try to determine what version of Christianity is probably the most correct.
So
and then you
worship Jesus.
No, that's another step. Another step is, I believe it's true. Now, is it worthy to be worshipped?
Okay. But if God doesn't need you to worship him, he just wants you to follow his commands, like love one another, love your neighbor as you love yourself. And in Islam says, give charities, take care of orphans, help needies and so on. If God just asks you to do this, would you do those without even believing in God?
I probably already do.
Yes? You probably already do.
Yeah.
Probably.
I don't pray 5 times a day or
no.
a certain direction,
yes.
but
I understand, yes. But the thing is that according my understanding, and according my belief, God only wants us to do good deeds, and that's all. Those others, like praying and other things, are extra. It doesn't mean that, for example, many Muslims say, oh, if you don't believe, you go to hell, or even Christians say that if you don't believe, you go to hell. That's absolutely wrong, according to my understanding. As long as you are a good person and you do good deeds in this life.
Perfect, Dawah, you're basically a secular humanist atheist, and you just and you just put the God label on to help explain things.
No, because I have, because I have read a lot of good, commands in Quran, and that God says there that all mankind. It doesn't say Muslims. It says all mankind, the best of you in the sight of Allah. So
you still believe that the Quran was written by God?
Yes, I believe that he.
Okay, then you're not an atheist. You're.
No.
But,
I believe that it was written by God, and transferred to Prophet Muhammad. And there it says that the best of you in the sight of Allah is the most righteous of you. So it is not about Muslim and non-Muslim.
I understand all this, but you do understand guys like me don't believe the Quran has anything to do with a God, right?
I understand, but as long as you do good deeds, I've said it many times to other people, as long as you do good deeds, you are safe. He just wants you, and he even says that if you avoid major bad deeds, I forgive your minor bad deeds. So even your minor bad deeds will be, forgiven by God. So because he's the most merciful and forgiving. And I'd
rather be forgiven to people who I actually offend and trespass.
Yeah. That's definitely possible, because God knows that people make mistakes. But just avoid major bad deeds.
Perfect, Dawah, I like you. I really do, but you tend to preach a little bit too much.
Yeah.
Okay, but it was a great conversation. Have a great day.
Thank you, my brother. Take care. Have a nice day. Bye.
Bye.
Take care.
I think most people are like me in the sense that if you see something amazing, if you're sitting in here in the live stream chat and you call yourself a naturalist, I think you're more like me than Matt Dillahunty. I think if you saw someone you know personally who's been dead for years come back to life in the name of Allah, in the name of Jesus, in the name of Ganesh, you're going to walk away from that experience, and it's verified. Like, they're alive. The DNA matches up with the records from 5 years ago. Other people see it. Like, there's no question. This person came back from the dead in the name and the incantation of a certain God, and it worked. Your whole worldview is going to be shattered that day. And I think I can only say that it's some type of weird, sick stubbornness that would say, it was aliens. Could it be aliens? Yes. But all I'm saying is your confidence in what we call not natural would go up. And your confidence in naturalism, everything's natural, would go down. That's very reasonable to say. Thanks for the donation, Mason. Oh, I hate that question. What is your response to logic is immaterial? You probably hate this question too, right, Mason? I would say no. I would say logic is, depending on how you define it, logic can be defined as, those three laws. It can be defined on how the brain processes information, do logic, as opposed to the laws of logic. So it depends on what they're talking about. But I would say logic is what we've discovered as an outflowing of the nature of the properties of the universe. How can something exist and not exist at the same time, or be read or not read at the same time, if you don't have existence? You have to have a universe first for any laws of logic to apply. So it's just a natural, in quotes, outflowing property of the universe. And I know even philosophers hate when I say it this way. What's his name? Try to explain it to me, but was unsuccessful. Why I shouldn't say it that way, but to me, it seems just very reasonable. It's still natural in the sense of you got a reverse entropy happening. Well, that's not natural, Matthew. But it's that incantation part. It's basically breaking the laws of physics by a spoken word. It's basically a form of magic, right? Like true, real magic, not just trickery. I agree, Anton. You can never, well, no, I agree and disagree. Sure, I can say what I think would convince me. Can I be wrong? Yes. But my answer to that always is like for a Christian to say, oh, Doug, you still wouldn't believe. You'd be just like Matt Dillahunty. You still wouldn't believe. You'd be stubborn too, Doug, if I pray in the name of Jesus and your water-soaked napkin lit on fire. My response to that is, let's try it. If it happens and you're right, I will admit I was wrong and you're right. Logic is just a description of what is happening. Logic is not a thing in itself. Yeah, I would tend to agree with that, Displaced Gamer, and thanks for the donation. Question, in your opinion, has religion done more good or more harm? That's really a tough question, because I think religion is and was necessary to help human flourishing. Like, religion exists for a reason. As a naturalist, I think you're forced to say that. Like, we have these superstitions for a reason. It helps us survive. It helps us behave. There's some people who don't need, like, think of kids. Very young kids don't need to know, well, they do eventually, but they're not explained why something is wrong. It's just, don't do it. This is little bit like religion. It's a rule book to help people survive. And we Homo sapiens made God invisible, made God kind of far away, but yet here somehow, to replace concepts like the Lion King, to replace the silverback gorilla. But most people need a leader. They need a guide. Unfortunately, I'm the type of person at a very young age who wasn't that way so much. Yeah. Doggo Ba Dave is giving some practical benefits of religion. People who are needy need guidance. I'm glad you said a Jerome and not me. That's what I was thinking. I didn't want to say it for some reason. The room's open. Just click on the link. I'm looking for Christians to talk about one of these topics. Thank you, Shrivy, for an Applebee's voucher for Matt and Doug to bury the hatchet or to dig deeper trenches. Oh, thanks for the generous donation. That's euros, right? If I had Matt's phone number and I called him up and say, hey, let's go to Applebee's and have a talk, I honestly think he'd say no. For those of you who think that Matt, his distaste for me is something recent, no, I don't think so. I think he has had a distaste for me maybe even prior to the Robert Price interview. But during the Robert Price interview, I think he did not like the way I handled it. Here's another example. Like with Perfect Dawah, I was explaining the differences between me and Matt, which represents the differences between atheists like me and atheists like Matt. And that is our families. Like we all have different families and we all react to our families differently. I've heard just a little bit about some of the terrible stuff that Matt's family has done to him, like his parents. Does he still have both parents? I don't know. Like the preaching and the letters and all that sort of thing. And I heard recently that he said that he would take, if he gets a mail, don't quote me on this, I could be wrong, but it's something like this, that if he gets mail from his parents, he just throws it in the garbage now. That shows me that he's emotionally unstable. Because my parents do the same thing to me. They will send me cards, say that will often have scripture, God bless you, or the Lord this said. I mean, when my dad first found out I was an atheist, or near that time, he wrote me a letter saying just how terrible this is because I'm leading my children to hell. Like really pretty strong stuff. And guess what? I would say that my relationship between me and my parents is as strong as ever. Why is it that I can hear this stuff coming from my parents' mouth, know what they're thinking about what I believe or don't believe, and I can still laugh with them, sup with them, visit them, help them, they help me. Why can I do it and Matt not? and I hate to pick on Matt here, but when I say Matt, I'm also including all the people who just, they can't handle it. And they, I think, would say, to steel man their side, this is a form of abuse. It's a form of abuse. And I can agree with that. Like telling someone your kids are going to hell because of you or whatever is abusive. But I'm a grown ass adult. The goal of becoming an adult is to be able for people to say mean things to you and you can take it. These are words, people. And I know they can hurt. I know words can actually even change societies and so forth. But on a personal level between two people, you can let things go. Did you know that? You can let things go. Family doesn't deserve respect by nature of them just being family. That's true. And I'm not saying I respect my mom and dad in virtue of them being my mom and dad. I respect my mom and dad for what they've done for me. They raised 4 productive members of society. Because of what my mom and dad did, the way they raised us, the way they taught us, society is for the better. Except for my sister's dead now, the one that had MS. Hey, your name's Tog?
Guy. I mean, it's backwards. I don't know why it's backwards, but it's backwards apparently.
It's not backwards for me.
Screen. Oh, okay. Yeah. I have some friends who watch your show, so they've been asking me to go on for a year. So I figured, why not? Today's my birthday, so I know, happy birthday to me. I figured I'd do it as a gift for me and to them. So.
Well, maybe it's a gift for all of us. So, are you a Christian?
Yeah.
Okay. It's interesting. People can't see your avatar here, but it almost looks like the devil.
Oh, thank you.
Are you a real Christian?
Yeah.
You're not a fake one?
You can look at my YouTube channel. I've reviewed your stuff before and all.
Oh, you
that.
have?
I have a small, yeah.
What's the name of your channel? I'll even plug it.
This one guy, yeah, just this one guy.
This one guy. And is it at that Tone Guy official?
No, just at this one guy. That's the handle, yeah.
Okay, well, never mind. Let's. Which topic did you want to talk about?
Anyone, honestly. I'm on your show, so.
Are you for Christian nationalism?
I guess it depends on people's terms. I mean, sure. Like, what do you mean by Christian nationalism?
Well, what do you mean by Christian nationalism? Because I'm not a Christian. You are.
Well, you're the one with the question, so what is it to you?
I can already tell that you're not a true Christian. See how quickly I could pick that up?
Sure.
So why do you pretend to be a Christian and call in?
Well, if that's the way you see it, that's up to you. I didn't say that.
Okay. Do you want to answer questions today?
Yeah.
Okay. What does Christian nationalism mean to you?
Just people being as nationalist but also Christian. There are this weird this identity between that it should only be like a monarchy kingdom where there's a bunch of Christians in power. But if you really think about it, that's kind of already the case. It all depends on one's political field. So it's kind of, it all depends. Like, to me, it's silly for people to argue over, because it's like, what? So you don't want Christians to hold any position of powers? Well, that's tough titties.
Okay,
you can't do anything with that.
Okay, so you answered the question, and I appreciate that. And I'll answer as well. I think Christian nationalism is more about Christian theocracy, like as using Christian principles and rules from the Bible to conduct a society at the government level. So, for example, our Constitution right now says that there's freedom of religion or no religion. You're free to worship or not worship. Would you be for the United States? Do you live in the U.S.?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Would you be for Christian nationalism if it meant that the only religion that could be in the country is Christianity?
Would I be for it?
Yeah.
I mean, at that point, I wouldn't have a choice.
I know,
Other people are making the
but let's
decisions.
say,
I have no say in the matter. And again,
would you be
I'd have
happy
to
about
be
it or
forced to
sad?
be. I would be forced. It'd be non-neutral. It'd be whatever the outcome would be.
Would
If
you
it's
be sad
beneficial
about it
to
or
me,
happy about it?
it has nothing to do with emotions, because whatever the outcome is, it's what's good. So
Okay.
if the outcome of that turns out to be a good one for me, then yeah, it's good for me. Just as it's be the same for you. The outcome of that turns out to be bad, then it's a bad outcome for everyone. If it's the same way across the board. Either and
Okay.
it's
Let's say the
people that are
government
knocking
put you on a
from
panel to give
Okay.
them advice on Hindus worshiping Ganesh on the street corner, and they're asking what kind of penalty should be placed on that Hindu because they're not worshiping Jesus, the national religion, and they're asking for your advice. What would you say should be the penalty? Because it's breaking the second commandment. No, the first commandment.
If the government's coming me to ask me for the advice, I'd say our government's probably in worse hands because they're asking some lame man from the streets. They don't have their own shit together. So I probably would like, no, you guys need to figure out your own shit. Sorry. Like, why are you asking me, of all people?
Okay, let's move on to number 2. Do you think killing a zygote is bad?
Depends on the circumstances.
Okay,
Depends on
let's
what
move on
people
to
see
number
as bad.
3. Are you a transphobe?
Sure. Maybe, maybe not.
Number 4, have you ever experienced the intertestimony of the Holy Spirit?
I would have to say yeah.
Can you explain that?
The best way to do it, I'll start at the beginning. It's through a somewhat outward expression, which I think is baptism. It kind of goes into the thing like you were talking about yesterday with the trans people. We were watching that. I believe you know Brojo. So I come up around his group, 420 Cafe. And I was agreeing with you in a bit with the whole argument because in some way, trans people identify themselves as this other thing, and they go through an external show of it. And I compared it to baptism, and how like this is the part where it shows that they are identifying and they've agreed to this. This is the transformation that they're seeking, and this is the show of it. So to me, I'm like, yeah, okay, I can accept that. It makes sense to me, and I think it's the same
So
in their calling. But it's I also think it's, again, as much as it is internal, it's also external. It's what we take away from each other as human beings, where we meet the Holy Spirit in others.
So your experience of the intertestimony of the Holy Spirit is more about a change. Is it a changed life for you?
I can't say it's sure. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Life changes all the time, so like sure. For good or for worse.
Okay, speed round. Ready?
Sure.
Do you believe a man 2,000 years ago physically rose from the dead?
Yes.
Okay. Do you believe this man was God in flesh?
I give that a soft yes, because semantics on that. Like,
Are you a Trinitarian?
Yes. Okay.
Okay, that's basically what I'm asking.
Okay, there we go. Yeah.
Do you believe this man walked on water and multiplied loaves and fishes?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you believe there was a global flood that covered the whole sphere of the earth?
Not a global flood. No, I'm not a global floodist. I'm not. Yeah.
Do you believe there was a literal Adam and Eve that lived in a garden long ago and ate of a fruit of a tree?
It's hard to say.
Hard to say. It's hard to say what you believe?
It's hard to say whether it's actually based off some type of like the legend itself is actually a legend, or it's based off some two random people that they found and they created to make their own story alongside other religions. It's hard to say whether there's an actual lineage of Adam and Eve. Probably not, but
I'm asking you what you believe.
I'm giving that. That's the best. That's the best as I can take it.
Okay. Is there anything that would change your mind that Christianity might not be true?
That really all depends, right?
Can you conceive or imagine anything you could learn, hear, see that would convince you that Christianity is not true?
That would really be hard, I would say, yeah.
It'd be hard? So is that a no?
Well,
You can't think of anything?
I could possibly think of something. It'd just be like a denial of God in that degree, right? Like, sure, I could just decide not to be a Christian like any other Joe Schmo does. I mean, that's how people tend to do.
No,
So
wait a
yeah, anyone
minute.
could
You
just
think you can
stop
decide not to
believing.
be a Christian?
In the in the regard of people losing their faith, sure,
Okay,
many people have
what
done
can
that.
you imagine could make you lose your faith?
Uh, some type of infidelity on my part.
Oh, well, you could be...
From God, I mean, in that regard, spiritually infidel, not like physical infidelity. I mean spiritual infidelity. In that context, yeah. Like,
So you would have to do a great sin in order for you to...
what's like the top one? Going to another God, right? Or going to no gods, which is probably just as worse, but it doesn't say that. But it might as well be just as worse.
So you would give up Christianity so you could sin more? Is that what you're saying?
If that's what you, I didn't say that. If that's what you did, that's on you. But
Are you defensive with me?
no, just being myself.
You're usually like this.
Usually.
Okay. Like, let me give you some hypotheticals here. What if you learned... Well, I got to ask you this first. Do you believe there's eyewitness testimony for the burial and the resurrection of Jesus?
Considering that people need to be placed in tombs and they're kind of dead and they can't do it themselves, yeah, I think there were people that saw someone be put in a tomb. As for the resurrection, it's what's stated. So yeah, whether
It's
you're
what's
talking,
stated?
yeah, it's what's stated as in a sense.
Yeah.
It's what us humans have conveyed to each other as truth.
So let's say someone presented you with some type of evidence that makes it more likely than not that it's a story and not a historical narrative. Would that lower your confidence in Christianity?
No, because again, everyone forgets what was Christ's mission. Christ's mission is not to bring people to him, but to bring them to the Father, which is Judaism, which is what we're supposed to look at. It doesn't stop the God of from the Bible being true. We're supposed to look towards the Father.
I'm not sure what that has to do with what I asked you, but...
Because Christ is, again, he himself says, no one can come to the Father by me. And again, I don't think that's the case.
No, but what I'm saying is, what if someone got you to doubt that this person even said that?
Like I said, it'd be irrelevant. I'd just end up being a Jew.
Okay.
You still have the Holy Spirit and still God the Father again. So if you take out freaking Christ, you're still stuck with the Holy Spirit.
What would lower your confidence that Judaism is true?
See, then that one's a hard one. Again, it goes back to being indwelled with the Holy Spirit. Christ isn't true. Still have the Holy Spirit. Kind of hard, man.
What would lower your confidence that the Holy Spirit exists?
You know what? Maybe some medication for all I know, right? I mean, a good thunk on the head. Who really knows?
Okay. What would your life be like if you weren't a Christian 5 years from now? What do you think that world would look like for you? So let's say you give up Christianity in the next couple years, in 3 or 4 years, and then year 5 comes around and you're fully non-Christian. How would your life, and so let's say atheist even, how would your life change?
It really doesn't matter because life is going to be what life is. People go to their freaking day job. It doesn't change regardless if they
Your life
believe
wouldn't change at all if you left Christianity?
How could it change? In that, like, seriously, how could it change? Life is life.
You would stop going to church? Or maybe you wouldn't. I don't know. Would you stop praying?
I mean, probably. But then again, I'm not much for prayer anyway.
Would you lose Christian friends?
No. You gotta have Christian friends first, I think.
You don't have any Christian friends?
I have acquaintances online.
Are most of your friends atheists?
Actually, I'd say a good majority are agnostic. There are some hardcore anti-theists, I guess, in the circle.
Do you get along with them?
I would hope so. I think I do. I hope they take kindly to me.
Do you ever feel left out that you're the only Christian in the bunch? Or are you the...
No, I feel left out, but not for Christian reasons, because I've always been slow to reality, broken home syndrome. So I always like it's like always being late on information's having a step back, but that's just natural.
What do you mean broken homes? You come from a broken home?
Yeah, right. So it's like I always feel left out. I don't get so much on social because there's ADHD in there too, so I don't naturally get on social cues. So I feel like I miss out on things, and that I try to keep up, but it's just that is what it is. But I'm pretty sure I'm fine, and I'm just I'm a worrywart by nature, so that's probably just me being a worrywart.
Do you think Christianity helps you with that, like worrying?
No, not really.
Because it says in the New Testament, don't worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow will worry about itself.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Do you find Christianity comforting?
Not really. I mean, it can bring some comfort, but I see it mostly for people that don't even believe in it, which was the fascinating thing to me as an atheist. It's kind of why I got hooked, because I couldn't understand it. Because again, I came out to faith like 5 years ago. Again, I was an atheist, didn't even bother talking about religion. I don't know why people who believe and don't believe even waste their time with it, but they waste their time for whatever reason, some type of attention seeking, maybe. I don't know. Perhaps it's a projection on my part, but it's so weird because I came in to learn more, and I just continue to learn,
That's
watch
good.
different scholars and stuff. But it's again, it's absurd to me that people waste their lives away on religion. And if it isn't true, again, to me, when it wasn't true, I didn't waste my time on it. I was living my life the way I was now. Still be doing the same thing I was doing. I said, what's going to change? Life is life. It doesn't make sense. It's silly. It's just, it seems that I understand now why people are in on it, on the opposite fence. I was drawn in by God, Baruch Hashem, I'd say. But it's like, it makes sense to me in that sense. You get stuck, and people are going to be stuck with it when they leave it. There's no way out. It's like a what's that term? Black hole.
Okay, well, that was the last word. I'll let you go.
Oh, like with questions?
Yeah, I think we're done.
Oh, all right. I don't know if I have any questions, but yeah.
Well, yeah, you can ask me something if you want.
Okay, yeah, I guess so. That does seem fair. When did you come to faith, or have you ever came to faith, or anything a sort to that?
Yeah, came to faith around 7 years old, left around between 35 and 40 years old.
What drew you away?
I started asking questions that were uncomfortable, and trying to really put myself in people's shoes that believe differently than me. And of course, there's so many different things. It also, I have to confess that 9/11 made the whole issue of religion more serious to me. So yeah.
That's cool, I guess.
And then by the time I was in my late 30s, I had to be honest with myself and said, I don't really believe this stuff anymore.
Was it a sense of, did you ever test God? Do you test God? Did you ever test God? Did you know you could do that?
Well, some Christians would disagree with you on that, but thou shalt not test the Lord your God. But well, I definitely prayed and asked God things. But then it was always whenever, like the previous caller said that he thought that God answered prayer, but you could explain it away. You can in almost every case, you can explain, well, this would have happened on its own if I wouldn't have prayed.
People do often seek good reasoning. That is true.
Yep.
That's all. And if you think about it, it's even more perplexing because it's, in a sense, what God gave us was good wisdom. So it's like, damn it. Let's try to use this without wisdom. If God gave this to us, then
but this is fun. Ask me more questions. Like I asked you. You can even do
I
speed
don't know.
round.
I'm a boring person. I'm sorry. I don't know how to ask questions. This is why my channel.
It's tough, right?
Yeah, it's like, well, what's
Yeah.
there to ask? Like, I mean,
It's really tough to ask short, concise questions that with no assumptions in them or very few, and it's even harder. I don't know what's harder, asking the questions or answering. And to give short, concise answers is also very difficult.
right? Yeah.
I would say most people can't do it.
Not without a script or pre-lining
Yeah.
questions.
It's very difficult because people are either scared that if they give an incomplete answer, they're going to look stupid. I'm the type of guy, I don't care if you think I look stupid. So I can, if you ask me a question right now and I just give you a very short answer and it leaves it open to interpretation, it leaves it open for me looking like a schmuck, in my opinion, it's incumbent upon you to ask a follow-up question to get more clarity. And if you don't do that, I'm okay with that not being clear. But a lot of people can't do that. A lot of people say, no, I have to express all the nuances here so people don't misunderstand me because I need to be understood. I'm okay with being misunderstood. It's kind of fun because then their expectations are out of whack. And then when they learn later that that's not actually what I believe, they go, what? It's a neat little trick. You should try it.
I kind of like. I don't want to look like an idiot to myself. I want to at least to myself make sure that I at least think I know what I'm talking about, because otherwise I'm just talking out my ass.
But you already know what you believe and think, so you don't. So that it is.
In some cases, sure, but also let the Holy Spirit be a guide in what you say and what you do say. So there are some things that are off the cuff that I don't necessarily know. Is this for me?
Yeah. Anyhow, it was fun. It started off a little shaky because I wasn't convinced you were a real Christian, but I am convinced now that you believe you're a Christian.
Well, do you believe that I'm a Christian?
Yeah, I am. That's what I just said.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe, like, Christianity is a belief, right?
I mean, for some, that's all they can get to.
You wouldn't say Christianity is a fact, would you?
It is a fact in reality.
Oh, you would say that. Okay. Would you say it's the same type of fact as, let's say, gravity?
It's written in stone some places, yeah.
Like, no matter what bias you have, what culture you come from, you say we all agree Christianity is true? Because we say that with gravity, that gravity pulls things down to the earth. It doesn't matter what culture you're from.
I would say, for the sake of argument, yeah, I think Christianity is true as a human thing, human relations, because it's everywhere. We see it within our churches and all that. So it is true. We can't deny it. We can't escape it. It's an ugly skid mark, if anything. And if it's an ugly skid mark, well, people have ugly skid marks. You can't escape that.
I encourage you to try that with a Muslim or a Jew. Christianity is obviously, or is a fact. They would say you're going to hell because some of them would say.
I'd hope so. Shit.
You hope to go to hell?
In the order procession of things of my the way I believe, I guess, if you want to call it.
Do you think you deserve hell, Tog?
I would think it would be wrong if people didn't go to Sheol.
You sound actually more Jewish than Christian. There's a few. I think this is the third time you've made some type of Jewish reference.
Well, Christians are Jews, so I would hope so. Technically, Muslims are true. They're just the offset of Christianity, but who's counting after all? You know, it's the same with all the other heretics. You know, they all want to follow God, but they all do it their own unique way. Some go against the grain.
Well, good luck to you in life.
Right, yeah.
Wish you the best.
I'll keep watching. Yeah, maybe I'll come back on with more questions. Who knows?
Take care. B.S. Lewis. I came out of Sheol, not into it. Potty humor. Kind of. Yeah, you're right, Keanu. Well, I said gravity, but then I explained it as things fall towards the earth. That they wouldn't disagree with. Okay, remember when I was explaining who I ban and who I don't? Here's an example of something right on the edge. What Doug Dean said here. Pinecreek, do you think you're totally transparent to yourself? This is one of those questions that if Doug Dean were in my house eating supper with me, would you ask that of me? It's right on the edge. It's alluding to that I am dishonest, or I'm insincere, or I'm something. Right, Doug Dean? This is like that annoying type question, like you're the little kid next to the father saying, "Daddy, Daddy." It's like, get away, get away. Like it's not really ban worthy, but it's like you do enough stuff like this, Doug Dean, and I would say, I don't need you here. Like if you were to do like this another few times during the stream. But you can understand why I say this, right, Doug? And if you can't, I don't know what to say. Yes, I did respond to Mr. Deity's latest in the beginning of this live stream. Well, Bro Joe, I really didn't say thank you, but I think that's a reference to the guy who just spoke to thinking that the Holy Spirit causes his thoughts. I don't think so, Jerome. I don't even know what that means, transparent to yourself. Basically, you're asking, am I honest with myself? Like, how do you answer that? Yes or no? I say yes. There, are we done? It's like one of these questions that you know he's trying to get at something. Be transparent with your question. I admit in my early days of doing SE, I wasn't that way, but now I've totally changed. Like the way I did it, I do it now compared to back then. Doug, what's good? My cholesterol levels, they're down. Would you moderate a Bart Ehrman versus Craig debate? Yes. That's not going to happen. I don't think. Room's open for any Christians to call in. Let's do the Christian poll to see how many Christians are here now. If it's gone up or down. Oh, it did go up. When I did this poll earlier, wasn't it at 5%? Oh, let's wait for more votes to come in. It might drop. Yeah, Doug, I understand what you're saying. As you get older, you would hope you get to know yourself better. How long have you known yourself? Well, for me, it's 52 years now. Try doing that with a 15-year-old. A teenager. Teenagers are less likely to know who they are. So we shouldn't actually allow them to state who they are, because they probably don't know who they are yet. What, the prefrontal cortex fully develop age 28 on average? Okay, it's gone up a little bit from 5% to say 9. So here I think we have a Muslim who says, I can only deconvert Christians. Muslims are immune to his attacks. Why do you think what I do here is attack? Is a Christian upbringing cause someone to be more productive or less productive? That's a great question, man in charge. You're setting me up for offending people, right? Of course, it depends what type of Christianity. There's different types of Christianity. There's mainline, there's evangelical, there's Catholic, there's Protestant, there's Mormon. But I would say on average, are you comparing Christianity to just not all non-Christians? So atheists, Muslims, Jews. I would make the claim that Christianity makes a more productive society compared to atheism. Because atheists tend to reproduce less. Like, you put an island full of atheists and an island full of Christians, there's a good chance the island of atheists are going to go extinct. Am I wrong? I'm not wrong. In the US, yeah, the Christians are the ones who are doing most of the work. Because it's 65% Christian, right? Even nominal Christians. Was it not even 6% Islam? No, it's actually 1% Islam. What countries have the highest suicide rates? Isn't it Japan? I don't know. Protestant work ethic? Yeah, I like the Protestant work ethic. You work, you eat, you don't work, you die. No, in society we don't let people die in this society. As an atheist, what is your go-to summer baby barbecue recipe? And why is it devil worship? I like putting those really thin chicken fingers. Oh, my dog is smelling a Mormon at the door. I just told Adolf to settle down. Those little skinny chicken breasts you can buy at Costco, 6 minutes on each side, and just smother it in barbecue sauce. That's simple. I'm a simple guy with simple tastes. I'm an atheist and have 3 kids, but you're rare, Ithaca. I'd say most atheists, I don't know what the polling numbers are, but are far below Christians and Muslims and Mormons. Like, think of Mormons. Mormons is a type of Christianity. They reproduce like rabbits. Catholics are Christians. They reproduce like rabbits, especially Central American, South American Catholics. Atheists can't compete with that. Most atheists don't even want to get married. And if they do get married, it's with their same sex, and so they can't reproduce. I'm just bashing atheists left and right. It's fun. Yeah, 63% Christian, down from 74. You're welcome, Paul Richards. That was all me. Well, let's give 1% apologia. Having children sounds horrible. No. I actually agreed with that Muslim guy. What's his name? Hamza's Den. I agree with him on something the other. Well, it was probably a year ago when he said this, but he said someone called in and said, "How do I get hope, meaning, and purpose?" Some question like that, and he gave a very simple answer. He said, "Get married and have kids. That will give you purpose. That will give you hope. That will give you meaning in life." And I agree with him. Because raising children is extremely difficult when done right. It's very easy if you don't care and you want your kids to be murderers and rapists and criminals and welfare recipients. If you want to raise that type of kid, it's easy. But if you actually want to raise a kid who's a productive member of society, the mother and the father have to work hard. It's not easy, but it is fulfilling. Anything that's gives you hope, meaning, and purpose is tough. It's difficult. Except for Christianity, you know, it's a free gift. The Amish are the fastest growing Christian population in the U.S. You know what? I was thinking about this the other day because Danny from Phil Talk was asking about, or we were talking about Marxism and communism. And I brought up the Hutterites as an example. But if there are people in the live stream chat here who lean Marxist or lean communist, and you want that type of government system, you don't even have to wait for it. It's already existent in the United States. They're called Hutterites and Amish. I can put you in touch with Hutterites if you want me to. I actually know some head guys in colonies, and they might accept you. Why don't you give communism or Marxism a try? Well, these are Christian versions of communism. They live in communities, in colonies. They share all the capital. They have personal belongings, and that's it. Why don't you give it a try? See how you like it. Doug, do you come from a wealthy family? Yes and no. Okay, you guys, this is probably a great question because there's probably some left-winging atheists who think I got life handed to me on a silver spoon. My dad, my grandpa, died when my dad was he 6 months old? So anyhow, my dad was raised with basically just a mother and uncles. And Mennonites are, back in those days, were tough cookies. And my dad realized at a very early age that nobody was going to give him anything. He had to earn it. He started farming when he was 12 or something silly like that. He tells stories of buying his first truck with like a huge box of nickels or quarters and bought a vehicle with it. And farming with tractors at age 12, 13, 14. So this is a little perspective of my dad coming from absolutely nothing, dirt poor, and making something of himself. And then he moved away from home. Like back in those days, if you moved 3 hours away by today's standards of driving time for cars, that's a long ways. He was kind of chastised from leaving home, became kind of a pariah for leaving his community, but started a farm, grew, and built like a really nice big farming operation. And then back in the 70s, when interest rates went sky high, he almost lost it all. But he wasn't proud. I have to liquidate. He liquidated everything and had to really basically start from scratch. He didn't go bankrupt, but very close. So I can barely remember, but I've seen my dad go from happy, things are going well, to desperate, ulcers, like chewing Rolaids all the time, stressed to the max, to, okay, now I'm back on my feet. My dad taught me, or said to me, I'm not paying for your education. That's your responsibility. I've done the same thing with my kids. I told my kids, I'm not paying, if you want to go to college, great, but I'm not paying for it. That's your responsibility. Although I have told my kids that if I have any type of tax deduction, I will pass that tax deduction on them if they're still my dependents. And so anyhow, that's a little story time of Doug's life. No, what I'm saying, Chauncey, is my dad has not. Every father helps their children if they love them. So yes, my dad has given me a ton of opportunity. But he also, my dad is not, he's probably a millionaire, but he has not, like, here's $100,000, Doug. No, he's never done that. I think the biggest gift I've ever got from him was maybe $10,000 at one point, because his mom died and there was an inheritance that he passed down to me. I don't know. And people have this conception that I'm ultra wealthy too. I'm not. I'm very comfortable and I'm happy, but I'm not like trust fund baby type. I don't have a jet. I'm just upper middle class white guy. Where the systems of capitalism has been placed to benefit me. Yeah, right? Well, when my wife and I moved to Arizona, like, we didn't have hardly any money. Now, if things got desperate and we needed help, would my parents help out? Of course, because they loved their kids. But I know there was times we literally checked underneath the cushions for quarters and so we could go out for ice cream. Like, literally, I'm not joking. In our first early years of marriage. Yeah, I should be playing soft music right now. Story time. The biggest gift was 10,000. Why are you laughing, Craig? My dad let me struggle when I moved out on my own. I needed to learn a lot the hard way. Yeah, and it's really tough nowadays to be as hard on your kids in that way compared to previous generations. Like, I talked to my sister the other day, and she said that when she graduated from high school, she went back home to the farm during the summer. And I never knew this, but my dad said to her, no, you've graduated. Go get a job. Basically kicked my sister out. Said, you're on your own now. Go fly, birdie. Of course he helped. Like, my dad's always been a great dad that way. But no, you got to go stand on your own 2 feet. I never had, like, as soon as I left home at age 15 to go to a private Christian school. So I basically haven't lived with my parents since age 15. And then when I graduated from high school, I went straight to university on full scholarship. In Canada, scholarship means something else than scholarship here. Scholarship means you earn it. Scholarship in the United States sometimes means earn it, but sometimes not. But I basically never had to pay for, in my whole life, I have 3 degrees, I've never paid tuition. And I kind of have that attitude, like, if university's for you, you shouldn't have to pay for it. If you have to pay for it, now there's exceptions, of course. But if you have to pay for it, odds are maybe you should be going to community college or trade school or internship or just get a job. By the way, I'm not poo-pooing that. I actually think trade schools, internships, and going straight to getting a job, if you have drive and initiative, if, that's a huge if. Most people don't have drive and initiative. But if you have drive and initiative, my recommendation is don't go to university. You're probably going to waste 4 years of your life. You're going to be 4 years behind. And I kind of regret having so much higher education. If I could do it all over again, I probably would still have gotten 1 degree, but I would have gone into business much sooner. Because I didn't really start making real money until I was in my early 30s. Should teachers get paid more? Only good teachers should be paid more. Did you do biochem at the U of W or U of M? I'm a U of W business grad. I've never done biochem. I was an analytical chem. And I went to Brandon University in Manitoba for my undergrad. And I went to Arizona, U of A, for my graduate master's. And then I switched over to finance, MBA in finance. Yeah, I did love Brandon. It's a great little town. But especially nowadays with public universities being so, I'll just trigger people and saying woke, for lack of a better term, which is encompassing all this feel sorry forism and inclusion and diversity. And to me, that's a turnoff. And I'm saying this of a father of mocha babies. What made me switch from chemistry to finance? It was basically, I looked around at the other grad students and said, none of these guys are wanting to get real jobs. They were more passionate about the research than I was. For me, this was an education to get a career, to get money, to get options, to get a better life. For them, they were like true research nerds. And I think, I'm not like them. I'm not a true research nerd, so maybe I should do something else. My dad was a businessman. My uncle was a PhD in chemistry, and I went into chemistry because of my uncle, and then I went into finance because of my dad. So I'm definitely just a product of my environment. No free will. I dated a school teacher in Los Angeles who made $92,000 a year. Yeah. I'd rather make $50,000 a year in Arizona than $92,000 a year in California. Is $3,500 a month enough to raise one kid? No. Depends, especially if you live in California. What state do you live in, Mason? Or what state are you talking about? I think you need to make at least $5,000 a month clear, net, into your checking account before you even think about having one child. You heard me. If you make less than $5,000 a month and you have one child, I can guarantee you guys are stressed, right? Your wife and you are going to be stressed. Financial stress is the #1 cause of divorce. I think if you have 2 kids, you better be making close to, there's economies of scale, but I'd say $8,000 to $9,000 a month you should be netting if you want to have 2 kids. But $10,000 a month is probably more comfortable. Are interracial marriages more difficult because of cultural differences? This, I'm glad you asked that, man in charge, because it's a malformed question. No, it's not a malformed question. Your question makes a faulty assumption. Can anybody spot it? In fact, this is I'm a bit of a teacher by nature. Can anybody spot the problem with man in charge, his question? What is the problem with this question here? Are interracial marriages more difficult because of cultural differences? There's a hidden assumption here. Yes. I wish I had pine points to give you. Race does not equal culture. My wife has very dark skin, but our cultures are almost exactly the same. I was raised Mennonite, and she was raised a pretty conservative form of Christianity as well. Our cultures were not different, except for like her parents were Trinidadian, like foods. But like seriously, other than food, we were both raised in Manitoba, Canada, both raised in very similar religions. And then the other peripheral stuff like foods, and I think even our music were similar. So there was no cultural differences, or very few cultural differences between me and my wife, and it was very easy. And okay, you want me to really trigger people of color on the left right now, or the activists? My wife and I have not really experienced any significant or serious or problematic racism after living 20 years in the United States. If you don't believe me, you can suck it, because that's the truth. Now, I live in a great state. Arizona's a great state. It would probably be different if I lived in a different state, but I'm telling you the truth. What do you think is better, a finance degree or accounting? Finance, but it depends on your personality type. If you are the type of person who is detailed oriented, who needs to know exact numbers, you want to go in accounting. If you're more okay with uncertainty and projections and so forth, you go into finance. How much Caribbean food have I had? Not too much, because both the parents of my wife both died fairly early in our marriage. But I have had, whenever I went to visit them, it was all Caribbean food. Like I remember looking into a pot and seeing a cow heel and a cow tongue. It's like, what? Is my wife a good cook? Not bad. I could have done better. But I cook for myself most of the time. Because my wife is a teacher and she works, and so I'm at home. I do my own laundry, I do my own cooking, most of my own cleaning. Then I work, and then I do YouTube. I'm a very efficient guy. Pros and cons of US versus Canada. Oh. I'll be honest, I love the United States more than Canada. For a guy like me, it's very hard to say, even with healthcare and education, that I would be better off in Canada, because I'm upper middle class. If you're middle class or lower, then maybe you're better off living in Canada. But someone's paying for you, and it's probably not you. But I live in a wonderful community. I live just like 5 or 6 miles from a huge, state-of-the-art, clean, mostly empty hospital. The schools are, I wouldn't say excellent, but they're pretty good. There's a ton of great private Christian schools here that I've even seriously considered taking my kids to. That's how good they are. $3,500 in Mississippi, maybe. But Mason, to be safe, wait till you earn $5,000. Because what you don't want to do when you raise kids is have this financial stress. I think raising kids is more important than buying a home. So if you're not ready to buy a home, if you don't have 20% down and proof of income, you shouldn't have kids. Seriously, like, why do we treat kids less than real estate? We have certain criteria and standards where society says this is what you need to own a piece of real estate in order to like fulfill your obligations. There's way more obligations than raising kids. Should it be law? No, I'm not saying it should be law that this is what society should force people to do. But I'm saying that if there's any young people here thinking of having kids, this is, take it from a older guy, that it's probably better for you to either wait until you have more financial stability, or just like in buying a home, if you can't quite afford a home, what do banks do? They ask for a cosigner. So you say, hey, grandpa and grandma, mom, dad, we're thinking of having kids. If we do we have your commitment to help us if we run in trouble? Get it. I would even put a contract where they put it in writing. Yes, we're willing to contribute up to $500 a month, $1,000 a month, whatever. If you run into trouble, if your income drops below this, they will promise in writing to supplement you. Can you imagine if every society ran this way? You would not need the government other than for roads and military and the Federal Reserve. You would not need the government, and your accountability is sky higher. But now people on the left are throwing up. Nothing. True. This isn't how humanist atheists talk, bud. I'm glad. Because from what I've seen, I don't want to be associated. Think of it this way. Let's say you have a bunch of kids and you ask them, what would you rather be when you grow up? Someone who's dependent on others to take care of you, or someone who has the financial freedom to do what you want? Which of those two things do you want to be? Who's going to take the dependency route? Nobody, right? Then ask yourself, who's more likely to vote for the left? Who's more likely to vote for the right? So in a way, the goal of even Democrats is to make Republicans if you want people to be independent and financially secure. Ooh, people hate it when I say that. What do you think is the best degree at a bachelor level? Any science, hard science degree, or computer science degree, something like that. Stay out of the social sciences. But some people suck at math, so you almost have no choice. If your math skills are low, you can't really go into any science, except for maybe psychology. That's a soft science, though. This is gone. Please, Christians, call in. Otherwise, nobody wants to talk about religion anymore. You realize that? What actual policies in the Republican Party would support? More closed borders is one of them. Should the government provide social safety nets? Yes, but at a low degree. So basically, I always view it as a hierarchy in my mind. Let's say my kid needs food, right? Whose responsibility is that? Mine and my wife's. Okay, what if we fail? Who's next? My family, grandpa and grandma. cousins, uncles, aunts. Who's next? Community. Who's state? Local, state. Who's after that? Federal. Federal's at the bottom on that hierarchy of accountability. Yeah, people are asking life advice now. How to make up for a regrettable BA in journalism? Is more education the answer? No. Don't get more education, like formal education. Of course you want to educate yourself, but you don't have to do it formally and pay people a lot of money. It depends on how old are you, how old you are, but my advice to you, and this is really tough advice for people to take, think of the most boring job that you can do and do it. Think about a job that you really don't want to do and it's boring, but you know you can do it. Then do that job the best of your ability for about 5 years and save as much as you can. Then you start exploring other options of stuff you do like to do more so. But this whole idea of I got to do what I love, the Disney dream or whatever. Unless you have extreme talent, you're beautiful, very athletic, you're a freak of nature, it's not going to work that way. But boring jobs are usually the jobs like plumbing, electrical work, house cleaning, I don't know what. Just boring jobs that people need. There'll always be demand. Get those jobs, do them to the best ability, where even though they're boring, people notice you care. And you can actually even start your own business doing these boring jobs and make a lot of money. More money than a doctor, a first-year doctor would, if things go right. Politics, housing should be a human right. That's your opinion. A government that prioritizes making the rich richer over providing basic necessities to people's anti-humanist. Again, that's your opinion. I would say in the long run that responsibility at a ground roots level in the long term provides the best results. So the issue isn't really people don't have homes to live in. The real issue is people are having kids they didn't want. That's the truth, but the truth hurts. Now, I agree that if that's the real issue, how do you fix it? Or what do you do with the people who've made these mistakes in the past? Yeah, I'm all for. I'm not saying I'm against public housing. If you took from that, I'm saying against public housing, you misunderstand me. And that's okay for me to be misunderstood. I'm okay with federal or state social safety net, but I think that should always be viewed as like the last option, not the first. You should start a Pinecreek life advice. I don't have to, I'm doing it right now. How much should a couple in their early 30s have saved in the bank? It could be zero, but that's fine. It depends on what they've used the money that they do have and have made, if they're reinvesting it in themselves. But I don't know. I might have had 20,000 saved when I was 30. Maybe more. I don't know.
Hello.
Hey Mo.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Yeah, I just had. I was just in the stream for a little while. I've watched you first. I came on a couple of times about 2 years ago, and then maybe like 3 years ago in April 2020. It's been some time. And it's only just sort of, I saw your live streaming, so I just jumped in, and there was one question that someone asked, and it kind of seemed to, I know this time it triggers a lot of people, triggered you. and it was the one where he said, are you transparent with yourself? And I always wondered, I wanted to ask you, are you ever scared of the confirmation bias seeking, doing these videos all the time, confirming with these conversations that you have all the time with people? Are you ever afraid of that?
Am I afraid of talking to people who disagree with me, that I will be confirming my own beliefs?
Not necessarily disagreeing with you, but it's almost like a checklist for you to confirm what they are or what they say, and for you to think, yeah, this is it. This is what they are. Yeah, kind of like a checklist exercise, having these conversations. You often say in your videos that what they're going to say before they even say
yeah.
it,
Okay, I understand what you mean now.
Yeah.
So you're asking me if is that bad?
Are you ever scared of that? Are you
no.
No, you're not.
No.
Okay. No, yeah, I mean, yeah, because like
when you get older, you can predict human behavior better. We all have these intuitions of what people will probably, how they react to certain things. I'm not scared of that either.
Because you often said, even when I was watching a few years ago, when I first saw you say you do it for fun. That may be one element of it, but we don't usually do stuff for just one reason. It's kind of usually a multiple.
Well, I do think I'm helping some people.
Yeah, no, that could be a byproduct of it. But in terms of internal mechanisms going in within your own psychology, it's kind of like, that's why I'm just asking about the confirmation bias. Maybe it's that one thing as well. I was thinking, this is why I left it. So this is sort of confirming for me.
I don't see it as a problem, though. Do you?
Not necessarily, but I would say that, well, maybe, because I think...
Well, I'm listening. How is it a problem?
It could be unhealthy in the sense that, you naturally, flirt with ideas, flirt with, in this case, religion, coming in and out. And this is a case of just wanting to badger at home that I never want to feel like that again. So I'm going to consistently reaffirm these current beliefs I have by this confirmation.
I didn't see anything that really was bad about that.
I mean, when you say bad, it depends on what you mean by bad,
I guess I'm not really understanding what you're trying to say. So let's say you're right, and that every time I talk to a theist, I know what they're going to say to the questions I ask. I've heard almost every variation of Christianity and even a lot of Islam. I understand where they're coming from. I ask the same questions. I expect a lot of the same answers. But I still enjoy it. I still like talking to people. Once in a while, I do hear something new. I hear from other people that sometimes I do help them, with something. What is wrong with...
Quick question. Does when you hear people say to you that helped them, how does that make you feel?
Good.
And what about if you hear someone that didn't help them?
Bad.
How would that make you feel? That makes you feel bad.
Well, no. Usually if I didn't help them, they don't say anything. But if I made it worse,
imagine if they did communicate that with you,
that I didn't help them or hurt them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or in some form of way cause them distress. You often say, for example, "Oh, well."
Okay, so you're asking, what if I hear someone say I hurt them? Is what you're really asking?
Essentially, yeah.
Which is different than asking that I didn't help them. Some people have said that, and your question is, how does that make me feel? Is that your question?
Mm-hmm.
Bad.
So do you feel bad now? Just quickly tying. I know this is meant to be a religious forum.
This is why I would drive psychologists crazy if I was ever on their couch. I could probably get a psychologist to have a nervous breakdown.
How do you feel now about trans people, and if they feel like you've hurt them, does that make you feel bad?
Sometimes, yeah.
So
if I hurt them, bad, yeah.
Yeah, and they've told you that you've hurt them. Does that make you feel bad?
Yes.
It does make you feel bad. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so would you then stop actions that would make you feel bad?
No. I am all for sometimes making people feel bad.
Right, so that's a bit different from... So...
in other words, what I'm saying here is that if someone communicates to me that I've said something to make them feel bad...
Well, or hurt them. Let's say hurt.
Or hurt them.
Mm-hmm.
I support them telling me that to make me feel bad.
No, but would you stop the actions of hurting them? That's what I'm asking.
No, depends what it is, of course. There's always exceptions, but
Okay,
no.
yeah. I don't mean physical violence. I mean more so emotional, psychological.
Again, there's always exceptions. Like if I'm talking to a child,
Mm-hmm.
then yeah, I probably would stop.
Okay, let's do it for adults.
Or if I'm talking to an adult who says, treat me like a child because I have some type of psychological problem, then I would stop. But if I'm talking to what would we call a normal, reasonable adult, I totally support we hurting each other's. You don't want me to say feelings, so I'll say psychology.
Okay. So, and do you where are some barriers for you? So those were a couple of barriers. Are there any other barriers that you'd consider, like in terms of limits, or are those the only ones you can sort of think that you'd sort of go as far? So you mentioned children, you mentioned perhaps adults with some sort of condition.
Yeah, severe mental illness, children.
Mm-hmm.
So like if there's a trans person who suffers from anxiety and depression, they shouldn't listen to me. They shouldn't watch me. They shouldn't listen to me. Right, but okay. I've actually talked to many trans people and we've had great conversations. And usually it's the trans activists who get you in a waddle.
So you often say to people, I don't know if you still say this, but when I was watching you quite a bit back then, like 2020, 2021, you did mention to people.
I know who you are, by the way. Yeah.
Oh, you remember?
Yeah, I remember who you are.
Okay, do you remember what conversation we actually had back then? I don't know if you remember. Because I got you to agree to something 2021 or 2021.
Oh, I can't remember that specific.
Oh, okay. Basically,
but you're from is it either New Zealand or Australia?
No. I'm from London.
Oh, London.
Yeah. We talked about CRT, and I got you to agree to it when we discussed it in particular, and then your issue with it. Yeah, your issue with it back then in 2020 when we had the discussion was the how America would essentially how would they sort of give out the practicality of find out who's part of the American chattel slavery, historical records, who could get it. That for you, it wasn't an issue of principle. It was more so because we discussed how it's already been done in America, and sort of, I don't want to go through it anyway. But yeah, so I think you got to that stage and you're kind of like, well, that was your main issue with it, was the practicality of how to do it.
Oh yeah, you're talking about reparations.
Yeah. That was mainly what we're talking about when we got through to CRT. Yeah. But just sort of taking it full back to the trans conversation, you mentioned to Theist, I don't know if you still do, about markers and, for example, what would change for you in a religion, or what would change for you to be someone who does believe in trans people. And
what does believe in trans people mean?
so in the sense of when they say
I can fly.
So you mentioned self-ID and how you said, self-ID, that, you were comparing it to the analogous to the inner testimony of the Holy Spirit, and reasonably, I think that's what you say. Though I do think that's a disanalogy. But what would it for you, let's just say for you to support their cause, what would your cause? Well, for them to be treated within society as every other human being.
I do support that.
You do?
Yeah, as any other human being, right?
Okay, so what is it you don't support then?
In what ways do I don't support them? I do not support. My main issues are the hormone and surgical transitioning of children. That's issue number one. And issue number two is I do not support men in women's sports. And to a lesser degree, and this is more wishy-washy and more gray, but I do think that there should be women's spaces. So those are the three where I don't support.
Right, so let's do a marker for trans people.
I'll tell you my markers. My markers would be that.
How would they get into sport? What would need to change for you to support trans women in men's sports, women's sports? Essentially, that's what you're saying.
If you could make them completely women.
So what do you mean by that when you say completely women?
That you could take 1,000 trans men and 1,000 women, and you could blindfold yourself. And for sports, for example, you could see zero average differences in athletics, in speed or strength or agility, that type of thing, response time.
Okay, so that would be a marker.
Yeah. And we don't have that right now.
Okay. No, thank you for that. But yeah, no, so the main thing was about the confirmation bias, and if you're ever afraid of that, which you answered. So no, thank you for that. I don't know if you had any quick questions for me. Or...
No, I'm just rethinking what I just said. If I... Did I say trans women? Did I get that right?
Yeah, you said trans
okay.
women.
Just making sure what I said was right. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, because right now I think that the bell curves, the distribution curves, you can be a lower 40% male, and you can be like top 20% females. So it's just not fair. There's women's sports exist for a reason.
Okay. No, thank you for that.
And I'll tell you what my marker is for the surgery thing too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So if you told me, if we had evidence of real actual data on suicides for pre-surgery or even hormonal replacement or whatever, and then we did this type of transitioning in minors, and then we look at the actual suicide rates afterwards. Now, there's some people out there think we already have that, but we don't.
Well, I know some countries are now currently restricting it just for research at the moment. So UK is one where I am currently.
Sweden, Norway, UK, United States is falling behind on this issue. But we have no data that actually says that right now, when someone says that trans gender affirming care works, to me, it's a very crude analogy, but to me it's like a screaming child who wants ice cream, and you give them an ice cream and then they're happy for a while. We do not have 10, 20, 30-year studies that show that it actually reduces actual suicides. I'm not talking about thinking about suicide or even cutting yourself or depression. I'm talking about actual suicides. We don't have that data.
Okay, so for you, it's just a matter of the data, then.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, when you were just saying that, it reminded me of James. I don't know if you know James Tour and Professor Dave. They did a debate, and he was just screaming the whole. We don't have the data. We don't have the data. You know, I'd love it. You know, if we had the data. You know, but yeah.
For the women's spaces one, it's more of a intuition thing. It can't really be data based. Well, no, I guess it could be, because we know males. Like when I say men, I mean males. When I say women, I mean females. And a lot of this is a matter of definitions. Because
I mean, I was going to say even male and female. You know. Yeah,
like, and to me, gender is like maleness or femaleness.
And if I ask you what is maleness or femaleness, what would you say? How would you describe it to an alien, for example? Or if I even ask you what is maleness?
Yeah, I think what the science would say, a male is someone who produces sperm or has the ability to produce sperm and has XY chromosomes. You can do it two ways. Female is XX, produces larger gametes like eggs, and that there's always going to be mutations and abnormalities, which is called intersex. Intersex is the result of an abnormal situation, but I would still say it's a binary situation of two either sex cells or two sex chromosomes, and you can still get maleness and females from intersex, but that's such a small percentage. So yeah, that's what a male is or a female.
Okay, so that's what you'd explain.
So if you think of a woman with no boobs, flat-chested like a man, is she any less female? No. What if she can't grow her hair long? The stereotypical, things that females have. No, she's not less of a woman. She's still a woman. And so you can't really define what a woman is or what a man is based on these gender stereotypes. I think you have to go chromosomal or sex cells. And then with the intersex thing, it's way more complicated, but you can look at pathways and see, okay, this is still a male, still female, even though it has some of these abnormalities.
Well, thank you for that. I mean, I don't have anything else.
Okay, thanks for calling in.
No, that's all right. Bye.
I think he agreed with it, most of the things I was saying, so he didn't have anything else to say. Okay, this is lesson time. Here's the fake trumpet. What if she is sterile, Pinecreek? Can someone answer that question on my behalf? Like, I get these types of questions so often in the comments, and it just shows me this person's either really young or stupid or wasn't listening. How many coffee tins of full old screws did you have accumulate by the time you're 25? Actually, not too many. My girlfriend Arden is streaming. Who's the guest host? I'm not really clear on why you couldn't say that a woman that doesn't fit as many of the gender norms is less of a woman. Because the way I define woman, Matthew. If you define a woman as a human who's female, and you should define female the way I just did, then these stereotypical gender norms, you did a double negative here, so I'm going to even give up trying to answer it. You should call into the famous Theist channel. Engage in them in conversations there. You owe it to every free thinker ever persecuted by religion. With great power comes great responsibility. What is the famous Theist channel? Never heard of them. Maybe I have. Can you give me a link? Actually, you probably can't. Email me. Did someone answer the fake trumpets question?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Welcome.
So I was going to talk about transgenderism for a little bit. I'm not a Christian, but I have one little idea I'd like to run past you.
Sure.
Do you feel like that there is a scientific definition and then social definition for words? Like if you look at a tree, for example, you'll see a lot of different trees, but sometimes if you get into like the biology or the evolutionary pattern,
Sure,
that
I
like,
think that
oh,
makes
you know,
sense. Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Yep.
Do you think that there can be men and women, scientifically defined, biologically defined, biological male, biological female, with the 0.2% intersex, whatever, but then also have a social definition of a man and woman? And if you were to meet someone that you would socially define as a woman, would you refer to them as female in your dialogue with them, or vice versa, male?
Probably. I wouldn't
Okay.
say always, because if they're really rude to me, I'd probably...
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you try to like pick at what they're uncomfortable with just to make them more uncomfortable.
Yep.
Do you think anyone would have, I guess, like, what would be the problem with viewing the world that way? What, like, is that not like
this is where
make you like
okay, let me recap what you asked me and how I answered. You asked me about different definitions based on science, based on social constructions. I answered yes, they exist in that way. You asked me about would I kind of be polite and civil. If someone wanted to be referred in certain ways using those more social definitions versus scientific, I answered in the affirmative usually. Now you're asking, so what's the problem? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Here's the problem. The problem becomes that when you have this dissociation of language from the scientific sex, and you, like, the word gender can be used two ways. It can be used, my gender is male. It can be used that way, or it can be used as what you're talking about, the social convention, as Doug is a manly guy. I mean, look at those arms, look at those shoulders, which are great, by the way.
That's true, yeah.
So it can be used that way. And there's no problem with that. I have no problem with that. Where the problem happens is with the main issues that concern me the most. When we start saying that these concepts of people being born in the wrong body, and I understand not everybody says that, and so the attempts to change your body to be more like the body that you think you're not born into, and doing this to people without their prefrontal cortex being fully developed, doing this potentially to kids who are very open to social contagion and peer pressure, and where we don't have real hard data and evidence that it helps, other than to make them maybe less depressed or lower the risk of suicide. But that doesn't mean they'll actually lower the risk of actually committing suicide. This is a big thing that most people miss. And when it comes to social policy and political policy on things like sports, which I think a lot of people think, well, who cares about sports? Sports in the United States is a huge deal, and women love sports, and women's sports exists for a reason. And women's spaces, women's change rooms, if you just start saying, okay, why can't we just call that male a woman and then allow him to play sports and then allow him to go into women's spaces? Or a kid who's 15 years old to start taking drugs, or even a kid that's 10 and blocking their puberty. There are so many issues here. That's where I have a problem. If someone just wants me to view them as a gender opposite of their sex, fine. But I do think that it's good to have laws. Just like murder hardly ever happens in the United States, we still have laws against murder. Just because trans issues hardly ever happen, we can still have laws against that discriminate against certain things that trans people want to do. And I know for a trans activist right now, they're just going out of their minds insane right now, because I'm saying that sometimes it's good to discriminate against trans people. I'll stand by that, because sometimes we need to protect people from themselves, the mentally ill, and sometimes we need to protect people from other people, like in sports and like in women's spaces and so forth. And I'm sorry if people disagree with me, but this is my opinion. And I do think I either have the science to back it up or the lack of science to say we shouldn't do certain things. And that's it. I should clip that. That
what
was
kind
well
of
done.
Data? Oh, yeah. That was very succinct, yes. I was wondering, what kind of data would you need probably to, I don't know, like, let's say, maybe not trans women in women's sports, right? I feel like that even within the trans activist community, there's still like some friction there. Maybe not so much on like the high school level where it's like, where it's like lower stakes, not like high school level entering college and like competitions that wise, but just more of like recreational sports allowing trans women with women. But for like specifically like earlier access to HRT or things like that, what
Totally
kind of
against
data
it.
would you need to?
Yeah.
Right.
Kind
Yeah,
of
but
data
what kind
I
of data
need?
would you need to maybe change your mind or make you more in the gray zone? What's that scale you always say, like
I got a lot of
the
markers.
1 to 10 thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would,
Okay.
Marker number 1 would be clear evidence that our prefrontal cortex is developed way sooner than we think it does. Marker number 2, hard evidence that the transitioning, hard evidence that the regret levels are as low as the 1% and not maybe 50, like over longitudinal studies over like decades instead of just 5-10 years. Hard evidence that it actually helps because of the risk so high on certain of these procedures that it actually does decrease actual suicide rates, not just suicide ideation. A lot of the trans activists has to get that word out of their head, because guys like me don't care as much, I should say, about feeling like you want to commit suicide or feeling depressed. It's more about, are they actually going to commit suicide? Do they make plans to commit suicide? Because right now all the data suggests that trans kids suck, thankfully, at committing suicide. If you want to commit, middle-aged white men are really good at it. Middle-aged white men are really good at committing suicide, but trans kids suck at it. So this whole thing about, they're going to die unless you do it, I totally reject.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, sure, there might be a handful, but even in those cases, did they really die from not getting a trans treatment they wanted, or did they die because they were bullied, or because their parents rejected them, or they were in the sex trade industry, or they were on drugs, or whatever the case is? It's like the martyrdom with Christianity. How do you know they died for their belief in the resurrection? How do you know they died for their belief that they're born in the wrong body? It's really difficult to know these things.
Yeah, especially when it comes to self-reporting. There's obviously a bunch of different factors.
That's another marker. Like, all the evidence seems to point that self-reporting on things that are highly social, political, not a really good metrics, reliable metrics.
Yeah. So if there was a non-self-reporting methodology of maybe like determining if someone was going to experience like heavy gender dysphoria, you would be more in favor of that?
Yeah. Like if we even had a reliable method to determine if someone's trans or not, that would be a good start. We don't.
Yeah.
Like, what I said is right?
Yeah, no, I mean, I totally understand where you're coming from. I'm
Like,
definitely not like
can you imagine
harsh line on any of this.
I bet you trans activists even hate this idea. But can you imagine this pen is like some type of needle. Can you imagine if I just went like this and then looked at the pen and, the two blue lines mean you're a male. I mean, a man. You got the man brain.
Like in your mind, or like dysphoria wise. Yeah.
You got a man brain, right? You can imagine if it was that simple. And then...
Yeah, that'd be so nice.
Well, would it? I bet you some trans activists would be against that, because they would say even your mind can be different than the physical test. That it's almost like there's a gender identity soul that supersedes the physical. I don't want to say all trans activists would say this, but it almost seems like some of them would say this because, for example, let's say you see a guy who you and I would say that's a male, but he's wearing a dress and wants to go in women's spaces. And let's say there's a law that says no males in women's spaces. And so there's a security guard standing outside the women's bathroom door. He goes, hang on a second, hold it, your arm, please. Sorry, you gotta go in the men's bathroom. Like, trans activists would hate that because we have evidence here. We got proof.
Some would. There is like there's a split right now, and I don't know if you know about this part of the thing that's going on, but there's like a trans medicalism versus like trans activist. I mean, they're not totally separate, but there's like a trans medical and then like anti-trans medical side of things, in which one side says you say it, you are it, end of story. The other side says there has to be some level of dysphoria and like confirmation through like psychological testing to be transgender. And that complicated dynamic has been like kind of exploding more and more. I feel like there's like a split in the community more so. Originally trans medicalism was like very like shamed and kind of lumped in with like trans exclusionary radical feminists.
You just said something that triggered me. You said the word community. Isn't it weird the word community is now triggering for me? Like, I'm serious. I almost throw up in my mouth when I hear people say blank community. I don't know why. Maybe someone here who's a psychologist can psychoanalyze me, but to me it just seems...
I could psychoanalyze you, no problem. I think.
Okay, why do you think that triggers me?
Because I have the same issue. Because I'm a little triggered by it too. I think because for me, the identity of a community is like an in-person physical group of people that are constantly interacting on a day-to-day basis. But nowadays, community has been a replacement for political group. And so it's like that kind of like split, at least for me, is what's kind of frustrating, is like the idea of a community being like a group of people that are constantly bouncing ideas off each other, having to live with each other, and kind of interacting in that way, being used as a
hang on a
term
second.
to just be like, here's a group.
I agree with what you just said, but someone just typed something in live stream chat, and I want you to answer this for Scott listening. What's your first name, by the way?
Brent.
Brent. Scott
Yeah,
asks,
I've been here a while ago.
Scott asks, why does Doug talk about trans so much? Scott, Brent, who brought up this topic? Was it you or me?
It was you. You said, Brent, come in here and let's talk about trans stuff. You sent me a text. I have the text right here. So
he's lying.
No.
You brought it up, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, obviously, it's like conversation is a two-way street.
You know what I find interesting here is a lot of people have been saying what Scott's been saying recently to me. Why are you bringing it up so much? Why are you even talking about it so much? What I find interesting, I think a lot of trans activists want me to shut up about it because I am actually making sense to people and it's effective what I'm saying.
No, I don't think so. I think you do make sense. That's all.
I love your answer. That was so honest. No, you're wrong.
I think that there's like a frustration of just like, either A, I don't want to hear what you're saying, or B, I don't want to hear people talk about this anymore. Whether or not I agree or disagree with what you're saying, there's just like that sense of like, I'm sick of running into this everywhere I go. This doesn't feel like your brand, or even like outside of your brand. Like if someone else were talking, it'd be like, okay, why does this? It's kind of similar to like the whole like, well, you don't care about sports thing for like trans sports stuff, where it's like, I don't need to care either way. It's like, this is affecting people and now it's a conversation.
Yeah.
But I can understand that. I don't think people are trying to shut you up. I feel like if people were just trying to shut you up, there would be like a different type of response.
But I was watching a Joe Rogan episode a while back, and he basically made this observation too, that he used to get so much pushback about the trans issue, and then all of a sudden it stopped. And I have a feeling that's what's going to happen with me too. At some point, it's just going to stop. Like people like you are not going to come in and ask me about trans issues. People in the chat are not. And it's just going to stop. It's because they realize that the more it's talked about, the more it hurts the trans activist cause.
I guess, like, if people are like trying to promote a cause, then yeah, if like, you know, once you've kind of built up your group and you have like a good, you know, selection and like little chamber, I won't use community of individuals online that are kind of like well built and have like, you know, you feel like you have spaces that you can enter for that, then it's easier to be like, they're the enemy, we're the good guys at the end. But when things are rising, when things are becoming a new topic, and when people are kind of like finding who or where they can kind of go or who they can be where, then yeah, the conversation starts to happen. But I feel like this is just like the natural progression of an ideology online. And I think also there is the other side of that, which is that things tend to calm down a little bit. Things tend to hit like a little bit of an equilibrium in the ideas. I've noticed a lot more pushback on some of the more radical transgender activism ideas. And I've also seen a lot of like giving forward with, like, for example, like if you jump back, I don't know, like 15 years, like if we were maybe not even 15, what year is it? Oh my god. Well, anyway, let's go to 2005. Whatever. You go to 2005, the way people would talk about like transgenderism or like things like this are like radically different and so much more like, I don't want to say grotesque, but like a lot more like mean-spirited, right? Towards like people being like, you know, dressing up as the opposite sex and stuff like that compared to today. Like even people who are against a lot of the activism are still more considerate to that sort of thing as a whole. So I think there has been a huge gains done it like on a total, you know, global scale, or at least like American and Canadian.
Well, you said gain?
Yeah.
Like, is being nicer to people a gain?
Yes.
Is giving people what they want a gain in society?
That could also be a gain, I guess. They're two different kinds of gains.
See, this is the thing. Like, are you a parent?
No.
Okay, yeah. I have a feeling most trans activists are not parents. You don't just give your kids what they ask for or want.
No, to be fair, I actually would not do HRT for children. I'm just coming in to have this conversation with
Okay.
you.
Or are we
But
different on
no,
anything?
I think we might be different on a couple areas. I think like, for example, like I feel like I'm a little more lenient on like the social dynamic of men and women being in different spaces, but I'm definitely more limiting. Like obviously the data isn't there for children transitioning. I don't think the data is there at all. I think that we need more time, smaller scale stuff. We shouldn't be promoting it as hard as we are. I'm saying we, but you know what I mean. And then the other side of it is like with, you know, transgender people in like a lot of different like athletic sports. It's like clearly there's like an advantage, especially if they like went through male puberty. You can't like undo a lot of that. And whether or not they're successful, I think over time, just even having like records broken by transgender women is going to be just like, well, that record's probably never going to be broken now, unless it's another transgender woman. That's
So
going
it
to be
sounds
kind of
like
an
we're
issue.
on the bigger issues. What about women's spaces?
On the bigger issues, I would say we sort of align, yeah. But with the women's spaces thing,
Like
I
change
think that
rooms.
like men and women's bathrooms, things like that. Like I personally feel like kind of the divisions with like men and women in that aspect, as long as you're social, because like, do you know who Buck Angel is?
Yeah.
So like, for example, like this is a common thing that people bring up is like, oh, would you want like Buck Angel with your daughter in the women's bathroom? Probably not. Like if you saw Buck Angel, right? Even though
Yeah.
Buck Angel is a, well, as he defines, transsexual man, you know?
Yeah. Okay. Would you, if you ever have kids, would you want them to be trans?
Would I want them to be? No.
No.
Why would I? I don't think
That's a
that
great
would be
question to
weird
ask a
to
trans
want.
activist.
Because, well, yeah, if they said yes, that would be kind of like,
Yeah, because
I
if
don't
they
know. I feel
answered,
like
if
you
they
would just
answered
want them to be
no,
aligned.
if they answered no, they're admitting that that there's real struggles and problems with being trans, which I think they could admit, but it's something.
Yeah.
It's almost like being trans is something to be proud of.
Mm-hmm.
No. Just like being white's not something to be proud of because you haven't achieved anything.
Yeah, inherent traits. Being
There's
proud
no
of inherent traits, I
virtue
feel like
in
is
it,
just
right?
toxic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And right now I see that for a lot of people who have very little hope, meaning, and purpose in their life, they are actually using this issue as a way to virtue signal, a way to find virtue in themselves. Look how compassionate I am. Look how bigoted and terrible that guy is. But I am compassionate.
Yes.
I love children. See, the same rhetoric that they use against guys like me, I can use right back at them. I think a lot of trans activists are cruel, are harsh, and are hurting children. And they, in the future, just like how we used to have lobotomies, we don't have it anymore. When you start taking off certain organs and parts of kids, which I know is very rare, but when you start even pumping hormones into kids, I mean, they're going to be on the wrong side of history on this one. I can take the exact same rhetoric they use against me and I can give it right back at them. And I hope they hear this. And this is the way you actually trigger a trans activist the most. Is you look them in the eye and say, you're cruel. You're hurting kids. Like, and I'm not just joking around here. I'm serious. A lot of trans activists are cruel and hurting people. And they think I'm the one hurting people. This is that type of animosity that they have against me. I have right back at them because of what I see happening. And there's a lot of people who agree with me on this. Can I hear an amen from anyone? Or is the church silent?
Just silent in awe.
Anyhow,
I think that
I got to use the restroom, so I'll give you the last word,
go
and
ahead.
then I'll let you go. No, you say what you need to say.
Well, that was just such an inspiring speech. I think that obviously, if you're talking about a group of people, you know, it turns more into a caricature of the argument. If you were actually sitting down having a conversation with like a trans activist, like more hardcore than I am, right? Like even with the topic of pride, I could argue that like, you know, originally there was like shaming done for, you know, the gay community, and then the idea of pride was more of like to combat shaming, right? But now that there kind of like is far less shaming done. Now the pride is kind of like becoming more of like an identity thing, and I think you could argue that that was more of like a combating method, less like a just like, oh, inherent traits are good. That's a bit of a ramble, but I guess going back to what you said, I think that both of you, if you get down, like as long as your values are aligned, right? And I think like someone called me out as like a Destiny fan. Well, you're right. I think if you kind of like look down and you go like, okay, do our values align? Like, are we both looking out for like children? Are we both looking out for people to be well off and non-suicidal? It's like, yes, both of us are looking for that. Well, how do we best get to that end? Because I think like the second you start off with like, oh, you're cruel, oh, you want to hurt people, it's like, well, you're obviously wrong for one thing, but you're not getting past that first step of like the values of like being like, look, we're aligned in values, we're aligned in the goals, and now we just need to like look how to accomplish those goals. And I think that that kind of conversation would aid a little bit more of a compromise, I guess.
Okay, thanks for calling in. I'm glad we
Well,
could
thanks for
agree
having
on
me
a
on.
lot of things.
Just a couple, yeah.
Take care.
Bye.
There's my confirmation bias for the day, right? I agree, Kyla. People seem more confused and lost now than ever. This is why things like stability in the home and tradition is important. And this is why I would love to see studies on mental illness and parenting. I know there's some out there, but there's something going on here. I've seen it with my own eyes. I know it's anecdotal, but since my son is in musical theater, and he's very, very good at it, I've seen his musical theater friends in grade 9 to grade 12 go from a boy to a girl back to a boy. I mean, it's crazy. They're confused. And I think a lot of the feel sorry for them, oh, let me affirm you in who you are, is confusing kids. And when you give kids attention that a lot of them seek, especially if their parents just got divorced, I would love to see a study on that. The uptick of kids who identify as trans after parents have been divorced. I bet you there's a correlation. Am I saying that trans doesn't exist, real trans? No, I'm not saying that. What I am saying, there is this type of social contagion going on. It's very reasonable. Poof. Thanks to all my guests. I got a channel called Pinecreek Politics, which is a little different than this one, but not really. Not today, because Christians don't call in anymore. No, I had a few call in. Thanks. Have a great day, everyone. Great weekend if I don't see you before next week.